At UDA Holdings Berhad, we have over 4 decades experience in commercial and residential property development and asset management throughout Malaysia. We have been primarily involved in the development of new townships, public housing, recreation facilities, hotels, commercial centers and industrial premises which are from affordable to luxury. At UDA, we are committed to building a sustainable future together.
สมาคมการค้าอาเซียนจีนก่อตั้งเมื่อวันที่ 15 สิงหาคม ปีพุทธศักราช 2556 โดยมีสมาชิกผู้ร่วมก่อตั้งประกอบด้วย สมาคมการค้าอาเซียนจีนมีพันธกิจเพื่อพัฒนาความร่วมมือธุรกิจการค้าทั้งภาคเอกชนและภาครัฐในประเทศต่างๆอีกทั้งยังส่งเสริมให้เกิดการแลกเปลี่ยนข้อมูลเพื่อยกระดับความสามารถการแข่งขันทางเศรษฐกิจของประเทศในอาเซียนจีนให้มากยิ่งขึ้นสมาคมการค้าอาเซียนจีนยังเป็นส่วนหนึ่งในการผลักดันให้เกิดความร่วมมือทางเศรษฐกิจสำคัญต่างๆอาทิการผลักดันโครงการก่อสร้างสนามบินเบตงการลงนามเมืองมิตรภาพระหว่างจังหวัดยะลาและมณฑลหูเป่ยประเทศจีนนอกจากนี้สมาคมการค้าอาเซียนจีนได้ร่วมจัดงานสัมมนา World Chinese Elite Entrepreneur Summit 2015 and China ASEAN Cooperation Forum ที่กรุงเทพมหานครและงานสัมมนา The Second ASEAN Economic Community Integration Strategy Cooperation Forum ภายในงานมหกรรมแสดงสินค้าจีนอาเซียน CA Expo ซึ่งจัดขึ้นเป็นประจำณเมืองหนานหนิงประเทศจีนและยังได้ร่วมกับหอการค้าจีนอินโดนีเซียจัดงาน Indonesia China Trade and Investment Cooperation Forum ณกรุงจาการ์ตาประเทศอินโดนีเซียสมาคมการค้าอาเซียนจีนพร้อมแล้วที่จะร่วมเป็นแรงผลักดันสนับสนุนทั้งภาครัฐและเอกชนให้ก้าวสู่ AEC อย่างมั่นคง
เอาทีนี้มาก
มาคมการค้าอาเซียนจีนก่อตั้งเมื่อวันที่ 15 สิงหาคม ปีพุทธศักราช 2556 โดยมีสมาชิกผู้ร่วมก่อตั้งประกอบด้วยสมาคมการค้าอาเซียนจีนมีพันธกิจเพื่อพัฒนาความร่วมมือธุรกิจการค้าทั้งภาคเอกชนและภาครัฐในประเทศต่างๆอีกทั้งยังส่งเสริมให้เกิดการแลกเปลี่ยนข้อมูลเพื่อยกระดับความสามารถการแข่งขันทางเศรษฐกิจของประเทศในอาเซียนจีนให้มากยิ่งขึ้นสมาคมการค้าอาเซียนจีนยังเป็นส่วนหนึ่งในการผลักดันให้เกิดความร่วมมือทางเศรษฐกิจสำคัญต่างๆอาทิการผลักดันโครงการก่อสร้างสนามบินเบตงการลงนามเมืองมิตรภาพระหว่างจังหวัดยะลาและมณฑลหูเป่ยประเทศจีนนอกจากนี้สมาคมการค้าอาเซียนจีนได้ร่วมจัดงานสัมมนา World Chinese Elite Entrepreneur Summit 2015 and China ASEAN Cooperation Forum ที่กรุงเทพมหานครและงานสัมมนา The Second ASEAN Economic Community Integration Strategy Cooperation Forum ภายในงานมหกรรมแสดงสินค้าจีนอาเซียน CA Expo ซึ่งจัดขึ้นเป็นประจำณเมืองหนานหนิงประเทศจีนและยังได้ร่วมกับหอการค้าจีนอินโดนีเซียจัดงาน Indonesia China Trade and Investment Cooperation Forum ณกรุงจาการ์ตาประเทศอินโดนีเซียสมาคมการค้าอาเซียนจีนพร้อมแล้วที่จะร่วมเป็นแรงผลักดันสนับสนุนทั้งภาครัฐและเอกชนให้ก้าวสู่ AEC อย่างมั่นคง
Dear participants, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us at the Business and Tax Conference, moving forward into 2022 today. My name is Wani and I am your MC for the day. Please be informed that this conference is CPD claimable under Board of Valuers, Appraisers and Estate Agents of Malaysia and CPE claimable under Malaysian Institute of Accounting. For those participants who will be claiming the above CPD or CPE points, kindly ensure that you stay online and complete the polling questions, which will be posted at the end of every panel session. The house rules of this webinar is the access link to the webinar is unique to only one person and it should not be forwarded or shared with anyone else. Close all apps, browsers, and emails to minimize your internet bandwidth. Participants' microphone will be muted to minimize disruption to the audio quality. For members of MIE who wish to obtain e-certificate and CPE credit hours, participants are responsible to log in at least 80% of the entire program, answer the self-assessment at the end of the program, participate in Q&A session, complete the feedback form. For members of BOVAEA who wish to obtain e-certificates and CPD credit hours, participants are responsible to ensure to provide full name and IC number in the Google form, answer the self-assessment at the end of the program, participate in Q&A session, and complete the feedback form. No part of the e-material may be produced in any form, stored in a retrieval system, transmitted by any means electronically or mechanically, photocopied or recorded without the prior permission of the author or the company. Ladies and gentlemen, the first session for today is our third roundtable discussion moving into 2022, titled Latest Tax Development. Without further ado, let me introduce you to our panelists today. Dr. John Tensei from Inland Revenue Board of Malaysia. Dr. John started his career with the Inland Revenue Board of Malaysia in August 2000. Currently, he is the Director for General Industry Section under the Large Taxpayer Branch in Kuala Lumpur. He specializes in tax audit, tax aggressive planning, tax investigation. Dr. John is a PhD holder in Business Law and Taxation of Australia. Next, we have Mr. Zaili bin Ayub, who is a Senior Assistant Director of Custom with 27 years of experience working in the Royal Malaysian Custom Department. He has worked in the tax division and other division in the Ministry of Finance and involved in WCO in Brussels, Belgium. And finally, we have Mr. Sohlian Singh, who is leading the tax dispute resolution practice in KPMG Malaysia and brings over 25 years of experience advising local and multinational corporations on tax advisory and compliance, specializing on tax audit and investigation across the different sectors. And the moderator for this session will be Ms. Agnes Wong from Syarikat Ong Group of Companies. Ms. Agnes Wong is a chartered accountant who is also a member of Chartered Institute of Malaysia, CTIM, Malaysian Institute of Accountants, MIA, and Malaysian Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administration, MICSA. She has over 20 years of professional experience in fundraising exercise, boardroom matters, and shareholder structure. Ms. Agnes Wong also is a licensed tax agent. I will now be passing the stage to Ms. Agnes Wong to moderate the session further. Thank you.
Thank you, Wani, MC for today. Thank you very much for your kind introductions. Welcome to all my panelists. Now, dear participants, thank you very much for signing in such an early in the morning. Right, very good morning to everybody. So our sessions right now, the time now is 9:37. Yeah? I'm very sure that we are still going to be having a very fruitful discussion together. Now, just to do a quick rundown of our session this morning, we will be splitting it into 3 parts. The first part will be, we'll be spending time with Lembaga Hasil Officer, Dr. John. Welcome, Dr. John. Yeah, and we will be spending an hour together and to speak regarding topics regarding to tax disputes and then others related matters relating to the tax review, etc., etc. So follow through to that, we will be actually having another session separately with the custom officer, Tuan Zaili, and we will be having another good 1 hour together. And last but not least, I'm very pleased to actually have Mr. So Liang Sing, my very close friends as well, from KPMG Tax Director. And we will be having a separate session to say what we have learned as a practitioners, right? And people who was actually on the ground on the tax developments. So all in all, I believe we will be having a very fruitful 3 hours together, right? So everybody stay tuned and let's begin the sessions today. Now, very good morning to Dr. John and Mr. Song. Allow us to directly move into our focus today, yeah? So, in the year 2021, we have been seeing many tax audits that actually, despite the pandemic, that's being carried out by the Inner Revenue on taxpayers' businesses. Would you be able to enlighten us on some of the current tax dispute procedures so that the taxpayers can be a lot more prepared when being selected for audit? So I would like to check whether maybe Mr. So, would you like to begin the stage? Over to you, Mr. So.
Thank you, Agnes. I think first of all, thank you so much. Thank you, the organizer, for inviting me to be the panelist and sharing the session on the tax dispute. Yeah, so on your topic or on your question, Agnes, yes, I think probably before I touch a little bit more my own observation for the last 12 months or 18 months, I know that we were all under pandemic kind of situation, most of us working from home, but we also observed, Dr. John, that IRB is also still working, during the pandemic situation as well. So coming back to the procedure, what I'm saying is that the IRB continue to do their review work and all that. Of course, my observation from that angle, where a taxpayer may have some kind of challenges because they are working at home, retrieving some of these documents can be quite challenging. But I think, to be fair to LHDN, whenever we have such challenges, when we ask for extension of time, such extension is also granted. The only thing is that one observation as part of the procedure, we observe when the IRB issue letter to us, they may be giving us a certain grace period of time. I think quite common to see perhaps it's 14 days or even to a certain extent, some of these 18 days. And what I also observed in some cases, some are even shorter, 7 days. So I'm not sure whether Dr. Chen had any comment, but I think from practitioner point of view, in the situation of pandemic, we appreciate where IRB can actually consider a longer period of time. But the fact that you talk about 7 days, perhaps is a bit short. So that's one observation, Agnes, that I can share at the moment. Yeah.
Dr. John?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. So, and thank you, Agnes. Yeah, we're talking about, I think basically we're talking about the operating procedure for audit that we have been practicing for quite a while now. I think when we look at it, then just now Mr. So already mentioned that we have certain time, like 14 days, 18 days, and maybe 7 days. Yeah, we have that certain stipulated times for different stage of the audit. For example, the audit findings, preliminary discussion, kind of thing. But having said that, so far, as far as we are concerned, we understand that for the past 1 year or 2 years or so, everyone has been in a bit mess with this COVID. But we do consider, actually, most of the cases that we receive here, when they ask for extension of time to submit document and to provide information, we do give additional time for them to reply and to provide documents. Thank you. Yeah, as long as you engage, I mean, communicate with us, there should not be any issue, because we understand. Basically, we understand what's happening outside there, actually.
Yeah. Honestly, some of the very practical issues that we had was during the pandemic, we are not even able to go back to the office. So
Yes.
to access to the letterbox itself is already a delay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are actually very happy to actually see that the Lembaga Hasil has actually been, giving that particular concessions for that extension of time. So I just wanted to actually check further from the indirect revenue standpoint, or even from tax practitioner standpoint. When come to the inner revenue, looking into the cases of this tax audit, what are the areas that you are looking for, and then how do you actually scrutinize taxpayers, basically, when you are being asked them to actually service the information to them?
Do you mean the process for us doing audit? I think that's the thing that you want to ask.
Yes, correct. You know, how you go through the procedures, what you're looking for, and things like that.
I can talk about it in general. Basically, of course, when the cases has been allocated to us, first thing we look into it, of course, the industry of the taxpayer, like which industry they are in, whether in service or manufacturing, or maybe they enjoy some status, minor status or tax status. Well, of course, audit is quite general in a way. So the intention of the audit is not to find faults. Actually, that's not that's not the right way. But of course, the keywords for audit is to check whether and to verify whether the taxpayer comply with all the provisions under the law. So of course, like you said just now, when we are allocated certain industry, for example, when we are allocated with a manufacturing case, of course, first thing that we check, for example, is if they claim RA, reinvestment allowance, then we will check to verify whether the asset, they really own the asset, they really incur the cost, the expenses, the cost for that asset, and of course, whether they really use the asset. So these are the three main criteria. This is one of the examples that we will verify when we do the audit.
Mr. So, anything to add on this particular part?
Thanks, Anders, and thanks, Dr. John. I think from the tax practitioner point of view, when we talk about what are the areas of focus, I also can share generally. From experience, if I were to, from my experience, if I were to share, IRB can actually touch on the very wide areas. And I think, like Dr. John mentioned, there are certain sectors and all that. But generally, from my observation, first area, those cases where I come across, IRB will still look at income. I think income recognition, for example. This is important when you touch on services, perhaps, where we talk about deferred income. There could be some situation. Deductibility of expenses, generally, this is one area IRB will touch. We may go in slightly detail later, but overview, I think Dr. John mentioned RA, which is a tax incentive. From experience, we also encounter maybe employer's obligation, example, and not forgetting, from an individual perspective, when we talk about high net worth individual, capital statement example, we can also talk about that much later in detail. And I think the important one, we also see that when it comes for the individual, especially for investor, perhaps, in a property investor, it's a very common, perhaps, area when we talk about income tax versus RPGT, perhaps, So these are the broad area that, from experience that I have encountered, that how revenue may touch on in a sense.
Right. As a tax practitioner myself, sometimes one of the biggest challenge that we have is we all have our judgment on the assessments and interpretation on the assessment. So I just wanted to actually find out from the inner revenue. A lot of time, of course, through our correspondences between us and the inner revenue, there is a lot of citations of, for example, the public ruling, examples, etc. Is it possible to also give us a little bit of sneak preview into the inland revenue processes when you do your assessment, when you actually exercise your judgment, onto a case. So that as far as the taxpayers is concerned, sometimes taxpayers are just having weaknesses in documentations, or they have read everything on the ruling, etc. But maybe there are still certain things that they miss out, I think taxpayers of today, we are all ready to comply. But we also wanted to actually know a bit better to say, actually, when you do your assessment, you do your judgment, what are the important fundamental or areas that you pay attention to? So that as a taxpayers, they can also pay attention to similar things and to allow the tax process, the review process to be as smooth as possible for both parties. Maybe Dr. John?
Yeah, Agnes, the way I summarize what you have mentioned just now, I think the most important thing here, when we look back at the basic idea for self-assessment system. So when we look at the basic principle of self-assessment system, I mean, the taxpayer, they submit their own income, and whatever they submitted to us, we accept it. And then, of course, they have the duty to keep the record for 7 years. That's been mentioned and been stated in below, Section 82. So the purpose of that, the duty to keep receipts and records by the taxpayer, and of course, the main important reason for that is that for the purpose of audit and maybe investigation later on, so that you can justify and you can show us these are all the documents that we have, these are all documents why we claim and why we are allowed for that deduction, this kind of thing. So like you said just now, when you talk about assessment, yeah, when you talk about best, I think best judgment. So easy to say that if your client, I mean your taxpayer, maintain all the documents that they have and they report accordingly, there should not be any issue. If let's say we do the audit, there should not be any issue, unless in certain circumstances, like maybe that is where there's a gray area that we are going to discuss, whether it's not that we are going to say that the taxpayer is trying to evade or this kind of thing, but the burden for us and the burden for the taxpayer as well to justify what they have reported in their income, but they don't have the document to justify that. This is where we have difficulties as well, because let's be honest here, from our part, I think best judgment assessment is the most, I mean, the worst and the last thing that we would like to do actually, because we would love if the taxpayer, when we request for the documents and all the invoices and all any supporting information they have to justify that that is the right income they reported, we would be happy to accept that and move on. And if possible, we may not collect any extra tax for that. That's fine, because I mean the intention of audit is not to find faults per se. Actually, it's more on compliance and to verify whether what we have done is correct. That's the main thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. John.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. John, for that very comforting message that the Inland Revenue first intention to come into audit is actually to check compliance. Yeah. Right. I think that is actually a very important positive spirit that we also will like to see. And of course, if there is anything that is being missed out or whatever, right? Well, if a taxpayer has actually made a mistake, then yeah, whatever the law is, it has to be in place. So, Mr. So, would you like to add on this particular one? As a practitioner, sometimes we are at a different side of the table with the authority, don't we?
Yeah. Thanks. I think thanks, Agnes, and thanks, Dr. John, for the what Agnes says, comforting remark in terms of that. I have been in tax dispute managing cases for more than 20 years. So one angle that we always work well together with the IRB is we got to find out in the sense that the issue raised, whether it's technical or whether it's factual. In fact, I personally do enjoy discussing with IRB when we talk about technical in that sense, because we could see that the moment we talk about some technical interpretation, we will bring up the principle, like what Dr. John mentioned, what's stated in the law. We also will bring up from the commercial perspective, and to a certain extent, sometimes we also will compare to the decided cases, for example. So for that process, then we could see whether the IRB can accept the reasoning, the explanation. Of course, there will be a situation after going through the process, the IRB may still maintain their view, for example. And I think this is the part where the son Dr. John was saying, well, it comes to that stage sometimes very difficult, then we may have to proceed to the next level in that sense. But when we talk about factual, I think this is also an advice to taxpayer. Whenever revenue need to verify, because whatever we submit, our returns are just returns, figures. Audit means verification to the figures. So that is where, to facilitate the authority to verify, documents become important. And this is a part that, from my experience, in a situation where if you do not have a document, we can always find an alternative document to explain. My experience with Dr. John do consider and quite reasonable, provided we are able to put forward the explanation and additional document to support. Still go back to document. But if factually a situation where really there's no document and we are not able to explain, then I think, to be frank, IRB have every right to come and make a decision and say this may not be allowable. So this is a part in practice. We do see that going through that audit process, it may be 2 weeks, it may be 6 months, or it may be 1 year. It has to come to a closure. And that closure is either, allow me to mention, a win-win situation, or a closure where we still maintain our position. And if that's so, and that is where I think Dr. John mentioned about the best judgment assessment will be raised. Because I think this term has been quite common in the tax practitioner regime that be used when the IRB need to raise assessment. This is what we call best judgment assessment. And that's, yeah, back to you.
Right. I think audit is a learning on both sides. Yeah, audit review is a learning, especially SMEs, Dr. John. And
Yeah, we do agree.
Lansing.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
Yeah, it's a learning. It's actually on both sides. It's an opportunity for a tax authority to understand how the business is run sometimes, right? Then why certain expenditure has to be incurred. And then, and both sides. And then at the same time for taxpayers to understand why the treatment is done this way. Because after all, policy setting, it can't be skewed to just one particular situation. There is so many other industries to cover under the same context. Yeah, so I think, thank you very much for that sharing. And after all, the self-assessment in Malaysia has been 21 years, right, by now, since the year 2000, and so it's 21 years without us realizing. So just now, Dr. John mentioned about 7 years of record keeping, 7 years of record keeping.
Yes.
I have two important questions here. Okay, one of the questions is actually under the pandemic, everyone realized that multi-locations is something that we have to work on. Digitalization is something that we have to work on. So moving ahead, we will be seeing more and more officers skewed towards digitalizing their offices and definitely their documentation as well. So there will come a point in time that some of this manual or source document, the originally cited, whatever the receipt, may actually be replaced by digital document. I'm just wondering, in the eyes of the Inland Revenue, how do you see this development? And what is your view when it comes to using those documents for the purpose of your auditing? Dr. John?
Yeah, I think we are quite ready to say that on our side, we have been receiving a lot of digital documents from taxpayers that we have audited for the past, I think, increased rapidly for the past 1 or 2 years. maybe partly due to the pandemic, and because they are forced to do it, and or maybe because of the latest development in IT, all the kind of things. So it's quite common that we have found few taxpayers that use digital documentations to prepare and to keep the records. But for us, it's still okay as long as it's readable, and of course in the two common languages that we usually use in Malaysia, that's maybe Bahasa Melayu or English. So to keep it in digital, for us, it's just a medium. We don't really mind if we keep it in digital or maybe in manual documents. And of course, it's still, and in fact, it's better if you keep it in digital, because it's easier for everyone actually, and it saves a lot of costs and storage. And maybe we develop further from that. Some of the taxpayers may be worried that these are all the old perception for the past 10 years, last 10 years perception. Maybe when we look at digital document, then we straight away thought that it's all fictitious kind of invoices, or maybe you put in your software and, for example, purchase invoice, when you scan it and keep it in your computer. Maybe when we talk about it 20 years ago, we thought that, yeah, that's fictitious maybe, but now it's not that straightforward. You need to scan that thing and you keep it as part of your supporting document. But of course, you don't have to worry, because from our part, we will look into that. For example, the purchase invoice, and of course, we do the third-party verification. We will check with the supplier. We will do cross-checking and run through with the bank payment, whether payment has been done, whether the payment has been done properly through proper channel. And then of course, when we do the third-party checking with the supplier confirm, yes, this company purchased from us. So then that issue has been cleared. So there's no worry about that actually. For us, it's just a medium for keeping records. So it's and it's clearly mentioned under section 82 big A subsection 4 about all this documentation keeping digital thing.
I see. Thank you, Dr. John. To all the participants, right? I think this is comforting. So you can go ahead to do your digitalization.
No worry.
Yeah. However, do pay attention that the Inland Revenue would do their alternative check, they will do your third-party check, etc.
As usual.
Fact, yes. In fact, in the budget highlights that I actually did yesterday, I did actually highlight it to the participant that within the power that was actually granted to the Inland Revenue for the under the budget 2022 was actually include the one that they can demand for the bank statements, on the individuals or etc. from the bank, right? And then if there is non-compliance of that, the Inland Revenue can even actually impose a penalty, onto the financial institution. So I thought that is a very, a big authority in fact. But then again, if under the digital world, I guess counter checking is a procedure that everybody have to check lah. Even us as a business owners, or when you do businesses, you also need to check the digital document that you receive. They are not just for tax purposes. Now, another source document related things that I wanted to ask is just now Dr. John mentioned about 7 years of record keeping.
Yeah.
Now, this question may sound a bit sensitive. Okay, the question will be like this. What if I am a small, medium enterprises? I think that nobody sees me. Nobody sees me. So I never reported my tax.
Okay.
And then the documents that's more than 7 years, I just threw it away. But I've never reported my tax. And one day, the Inland Revenue come to my doorsteps and say, hey, I think there is this provisional tax that is, supposed to be charged upon you, because based on our maybe third-party records and stuff, there is an income that you have generated, which you have not disclosed. So can a taxpayer come forward and say, but this is more than 7 years. This is more than 7 years. So I had thrown my documents, and hence, is it okay that I get, you know, a concessional a treatment, or I get waived onto this particular provisional assessments or anything else that the lembaga hasil is actually set upon? Can they do that? What does the 7 years of record keeping means?
After 7 years of record, you mean
Meaning these taxpayers never report tax, extreme cases, never report tax, and then suddenly came into the pictures, right, under the Inland Revenue Review, okay? And then the reason that they say they are not able to come up with their tax position is because this is a more than 7 years old situation, and they have thrown away all their source document. So so before I pass to Dr. John, maybe I challenge Mr. So first.
Sure. Indeed, it's a very sensitive question. But of course, my point of view is this, Ernest. First of all, you mentioned, there is a 7 years provision for record keeping. Second, you mentioned there's a provision of documents that the perhaps revenue IRB have gotten from somewhere, right? Yeah. So 7 years, yes, is provided in the law. You need to keep the records, but don't forget that we have another provision to talk about time bar. Interestingly, why I bring up the time bar issue is because based on the Act, the IRB can only raise up to 5 years, you know, the assessment, related party up to 7 years, unless there's 3 scenarios that it fall under, which is fraud, willful default, and negligence. Now, if I'm the IRB officer, Dr. John, see whether you can agree with me. Since I'm able to obtain this evidence from a third party, and this taxpayer did not report, there is an element of negligence there already. So if that's so, and if IRB have this strong evidence, my view, IRB can go after the taxpayer, even though it's after 5 years. Here, the negligence is there. The evidence is very clear that they are evading the tax. I use the word strongly evading in that sense.
With intention.
With intention, that's right. And taxpayer, if do not have that record because of 7 years, but the fact that the intention from day one is not to pay the tax, and IRB has the evidence to go after you, I don't think you have any ground or even ask for any waiver. Not fair to the government. I think every taxpayer should be paying the right amount of tax. That's my view, Ernest.
Okay, thank you, Mr. So. Dr. John?
Yeah, I concur with Mr. So on that. Actually, like you said just now, duty to keep records for 7 years. That's one of the provision under the Act. But not to report your income is another matter. So we can always go back to basically it's quite unlimited actually the years that we can cover for the cases, for any case that involve negligence or willful evasion. Personally, I've done a case that covered up to 10 years. This is quite a deliberate evasion. So of course we have the means to do checking and extract information. For example, when we talk about one of this, like you said just now, one of the individual taxpayer, he doesn't maintain any records and kind of thing. For example, he has 2 big houses in Sri Hatamas, for example. So we can get the information from the developer, and then maybe if he has done any renovation, we can check. And then of course, if that individual, he has 2 X5 BMW. So the source of the thing, that's the thing that we, maybe later on we will develop to mint test and capital statement. So that is the thing that will surface. So maybe on surface, the taxpayer thought that if I don't keep the record for the last after 7 years, and then I don't keep the records all the time, it's not easy for IRB to check on me. but I think you get it wrong, because as long as you spend, as long as you still within the economic cycle, we can always do the verification. So I think the best thing is not to go to that path, rather than we prefer that you comply all the while, comply with us and engage with us. If anything, just come to our office, or maybe you can employ someone like you or Mr. So to advise on your tax position. That's the best way to move forward. And then, you know, then you can have a good rest as well at night.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. John. Yeah, Dr. John, just on the last bit on this tax dispute process and etc. It's actually the finalization of the entire audit procedures. You know, so right now we can actually see that as far as tax investigation is concerned, right? So there will always be these final agreements to so-called like close the case. Yeah, so when come to tax audit, it is slightly different. So on this particular finalize, you know, we close the case, you know, we done everything already, document everything settled. Now you have to close the case. So can I just know a little bit, maybe from practitioner point of view, as well as in the revenue point of view, on this finalization, there are differences in finalization. Is there anything to be worried about on these differences? Maybe I start from Mr. Song.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Agnes. Like I mentioned, some of my observation for the last 12 and 18 months, the IRB is still very hardworking, Dr. John, still working in the office or even at home and all that. The only difference here is that the tax investigation during this period is still carried out from the IRB's office. Unlike, I think, before pandemic, we do see the IRB go to taxpayers' premise, take all the documents. What I see the difference between the audit and investigation here is audit, once it comes to a closure, we will get to sign what we call Surat Aku Janji, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
In the past, before pandemic, Dr. John, correct me if I'm wrong, when you go and rate taxpayer, and at the end, there's this additional tax liability, they come to an agreement, you may sign a settlement agreement, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so probably the last 12 to 18 months, we kind of like lack of seeing the settlement agreement, more of Surat Aku Janji in that sense. Yeah. That's my comment, Agnes.
I see. Dr. John?
Yeah, I think on that part, I can explain a bit on the difference between tax audits and investigation. Okay, firstly, the tax investigation, like what we have discussed just now, basically is more on checking on certain documents and verification of certain documents, and then what we verify, basically all the things that you have submitted to us. So we just want to check, for example, like your traveling expenses. We want to check whether it's right, whether it's not for private purposes. So that's audit. So once we settle the case, whether there's any additional assessment or not, then we will issue Surat Aku Janji. So basically the case has been settled and finalized. But for tax investigation, so now tax investigation, let's say we talk about pre and post PKP, for example. Okay, when we talk about pre-pandemic, pre-PKP tax investigation, actually we covered some more thorough investigation, checking on taxpayer. For example, one in our procedure that we have to do surprise check, surprise raiding. Not to say raiding, I mean surprise visit from us to the premises, and to a certain extent we may go to the house, to the residence of the directors. It means that pre-pandemic, when we do tax investigation, we cover everything. We check everything, we analyze everything. So we cross-check everything. So it's fair that after we settle the case, when we finalize the case for tax investigation in the pre-pandemic, we are supposed to issue a composite assessment. That is what Mr. So called just now the agreement to settle the case. So the difference between composite assessment and normal assessment is that composite assessment is a final and conclusive assessment. It means that once we cover, for example, 2015 until 18, so mean that 15 until 18, when we settle using composite assessment, mean it's final and conclusive, mean it's not going to be open anymore. That 3 years, even by audits or another investigation. Then now when we talk about in the pandemic, like Mr. So also mentioned just now, we did less on the agreement. I think this is quite understood because during the pandemic and during the PKP, even our tax investigation officers, we did not go out. So it's not that we don't want to go out, but everything is not conducive and it's so unhealthy to go out, and a lot of other things, a lot of other factors to consider. So then we do normal investigation without surprise visit. So it will look like almost like audit now. So we do investigation, but it's not a thorough investigation. That's why we will not issue a composite assessment of that. We will give a normal assessment. It means that under the law, we say that if composite assessment, everything is, we are satisfied with that, we are going to close, it's final and conclusive. But when for investigation, when we just do a normal assessment, give normal assessment, means that I'm going to raise assessment, but we are taking that with a pinch of salt, saying that I have not covered everything. So it's not fair for us to give assessment, composite assessment, and then that is where we need to explain to the taxpayer lah. So we have certain cases like the taxpayer asked for the composite assessment, but we did explain to them why we did not issue composite assessment. Because of that, one of the factors, because we didn't do thorough full investigation and we did not do surprise visit.
I see. Thank you, Dr. John. Dr. John, I can see that there are many questions that was actually posted in the chat room. You saw that, okay. Yeah. So now, to all the participants, this will be the procedures that we're going to go for. The foreign source income questions, we will be looking into and answering those towards the third sessions between myself and Mr. Saw. Right. And then on the questions relating to the audit and some other ones, we would like to pose it to Dr. John at the moment, since we are on this topic right now. So I maybe pick and choose the question here and there to make it relevant. So the first one that I wanted to pick is from Geraldine Wong. She says that, okay, let's add on to Agnes' question, the hypothetical scenario. If the SME has passed on to others, meaning so I believe, meaning name transfer, directorship probably also transferred, maybe sold to others, will the new owner liable to the fraud? This is again a hypothetical situation. Maybe I let Mr. So take on to this one first. If your client come forward with the case that I have mentioned, and then what happened was he is a new owner of the SME, and then he realized that he was being served potentially a provisional assessment from the Inland Revenue that he is pretty much unaware of. There is a change of hand, and then he's able to prove that, hey, it's actually, you know, I bought this company or this business without realizing that the company comes with potential tax exposure. So just wondering, Mrs. O, what maybe your
Thanks,
thoughts?
Agnes. My thoughts on that. With my experience in handling audit investigation, usually there will be what they call that a starting point of the process. So the process will be a notification for documents. So scenario number one, notification for document. So usually that documentation for document may ask within the 5 years. usually. So if this is the case, if IRB was suddenly to ask more than 5 years, I think the discussion with the IRB would take place even at that stage to understand. That's scenario number one. And if I'm the new owner, very likely I will go on the basis of time bar in that sense, you know. But however, second scenario, if it is for investigation or audit, which Dr. John later can correct me if I'm wrong, IRB didn't ask for any documents. Okay, but because IRB may feel that the evidence is so strong enough and may straight away raise the assessment. So my answer to that is, under this second scenario, what can the so-called company do? Obviously, if you go by the Income Tax Act, once the assessment is raised, you have to appeal if you are aggrieved by that assessment. So then my point of view, under the second scenario, if really assessment is raised, you have no choice, you got to put in the prescribed form of the appeal. And of course, when you talk about tax dispute process, once the assessment is out, you put in a form Q, it doesn't stop there. My understanding here is that discussion will still be carried on before the case management at the Special Commissioner of Income Tax. There could be another level at the HQ level, what we call tax dispute resolution. So I presume if this is a process and it carry out to that stage, then perhaps IRB at that point of time can share what kind of evidence they have and all that. Then I think would be the taxpayers' right whether to pursue further the appeal process. Yeah, in that sense. That would be my thoughts and my comment, Agnes.
Okay. Dr. John, if this case was actually on your table, how would you treat that situations of a new owner coming forward and, you know, looking innocent and, you know, being caught in the situations of a company that he purchased?
Yeah, I think we go back to the basic things, like company. Yeah, even though they have the new owner, new shareholders, but the company itself stand on their own as a private, the separate entity. That's the basic thing. So yeah, we personally, I've come across a few cases like that, like the previous owner sold off to the current owner, and then that company, unfortunately, did not submit the return for the past, say, 5 years, I think. So that is where the tax dispute and all the tax findings coming out, and the new owner complained saying that he was not aware about this situation, and then that is quite delicate for us as well, because of course it's easier for us to say that, well, under the law you have to submit all the returns and you have to report your income, this kind of thing, and then we can raise assessment, whichever the best assessment for us. But sometimes we look into the case as well. We look into the explanation from the new owner, whether it's genuinely they don't really know about that thing or this kind of thing. That is where we need to do further checks. We need to check all the minutes, the directors' minutes, the shareholders' minutes, and whether, for example, whether due diligence has been done. So what was the findings for the due diligence before the new owner took over from the previous owner? So we want to see the report, the due diligence report. So from there, normally we can analyze whether the new owner, they are aware about the situation or not. But I think in my personal experience, when I was an auditor before, external auditor outside, before the new owner took over any company, normally they will do due diligence, at least a simple due diligence to check the tax status, to check whether they have mortgage a lot of the properties under the banks or this kind of thing. So that's the basic due diligence. So even the tax position as well, it's quite sad sometimes that some of the cases, the new owner, they got caught in the trouble, but normally we do mitigate as long as the new owner they come forward and they admit, saying that this is a problem that I face, and then from the documentation we can see that maybe the new owner was not really aware about that problem. So normally we will mitigate on how they want to settle the case.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of things we can.
Yeah, a lot of case-to-case basis, isn't it? To
consider. We look at case by case.
But I do agree with Dr. John. Yeah, for all the participants, whenever you take over any company, a due diligence is a process that you need to carry out.
Yes.
In fact, the due diligence needs to split into 3 parts, right? One is a legal and corporate due diligence. Number 2 is actually the finance due diligence. How accurate is the information provided to you when you buy on your consideration? Number 3 is, at a bare minimum, the tax due diligence. This is a very important. In fact, there are sections in the law that really able to crawl back all the way to the individual 75 capital A. You know, there are so many things that makes a director liable on a business. So it is actually very important. I hope, Geraldine, that answered your question. I see there are some questions regarding source document. Yeah, Dr. John and Mr. Saw. There is one question from Anonymous to say that purchases from Taobao, China for the use of company, but the purchase document printed in Chinese word under a personal name, not company. How to prove this usage and to claim deductibility? So I think this is the common challenge when they are buying products from overseas for the purpose of company use. The documentation, in order for the products to be able to come out, it has to be to the personal name, it has to be of certain manner. Yeah, so Dr. John, how will Inland Revenue Board treat this particular invoice?
We a lot of cases that we have found that a lot of purchase from China that use Chinese characters in the invoices. That's fine. That's fine. We do have officers who can translate as well. But now we need to do further check on that invoices. Of course, when they say they purchase, for example, a machinery, a huge machinery from China, very special machinery from China. When the invoice is just one of the things that to support, then we want to check whether there's any payment really paid to China, to which company. And then, of course, coming from China, definitely they will go through our Port Klang or Port Penang, doesn't matter. So we want to see the tax, the port clearance, the custom declaration, and then we may go to the premise, to the business premise, to verify whether that machinery is there in the taxpayer's premise operating as the fixed asset. Then that is fine for us. It means that because that purchase invoice is just a form for that, but we would love to see the substance of the thing. So that's the more important thing actually.
Okay, so I want to tackle some of this source document thing. Another question is actually from Mo Awi Abdul Maman. Can Inland Revenue Board accept source copy document instead of original hard copy? For Encik Alwi, I think we have addressed this just now regarding the source document as well as original hard copy. So Dr. John, maybe you can just have a very quick 30 seconds reply one more time for Encik Alwi pertaining to this. He probably have missed the conversation just now.
Whether you put it in the manual document or digital, that is just a medium for us. The most important thing is that it's genuine. And then when we check with the third party or maybe your supplier, for example, if you purchase, and the supplier confirm that you really purchased the thing, and if you purchase plant and machinery, for example, your plant and machinery, we can see the delivery note, everything. And then if we go and do audit at your premise, then that machinery is there running for the business, then it's okay.
Okay, so basically third party check, verification to the location, proof proving of usage is still a responsibility lies on the taxpayers lah. Now, dear participants, for all your foreign source income questions, we will tackle separately. Not to worry, continue posting it. We will tackle it separately. So right now, we wanted to tackle the questions relating to the dispute procedures, etc. Because I believe a lot of taxpayers would have received tax audit letters, etc. And then the Inland Revenue is asking for documents. Now, I have a questions coming from Chan Heng Yuan. How can we justify the traveling expenses incurred for business purposes like networking with client monthly? What is the alternative document needed to provide to justify such expenses? Chan Heng Yuan. Now, these questions, I thought maybe I wanted to let Mr. Saw to take on first. Mr. Saw? Chan Heng Yuan. Yes.
Yeah. I think based on Chan's your question, you're talking about traveling expenses incurred for business purposes. So the word business purposes, that itself is a good explanation. What is the alternative document needed to provide to justify? So I can only imagine when you talk about traveling expenses here, whether is it overseas or local, it's not stated here. I presume if you talk about local, then your traveling expenses could be just toll, parking, petrol, perhaps, you know. And then my view here is that the company may have internal so-called SOP lah, in terms of that, how you want to make a claim. However, if this traveling expenses involve, say, air ticket, flight ticket, whether it's overseas or another state, and this kind of network with client monthly, I believe they must also have some objective things to discuss. So my view here is that alternative document that can provide and justify will be the purpose when you network with a client. Is it minuted down, example, or is the meeting whether it's something that you are pushing across a new product, for example. So all that in substance, when you travel there and you are able to demonstrate what is the purpose of that, my personal view, that can be used as an alternative document. But of course, if you go there, you make a claim for yourself. At the same time, there's an air ticket for your wife, for example. Then after that, you don't have any other document to demonstrate the purpose when you travel there. Then I think, I don't know, Dr. John, you may correct me if I'm wrong, revenue will ask further questions just to want to justify that part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. John, from what Mr. Saw's advice to the digital client right now in the audience, how will Inland Revenue take on those alternative documentations and recording, pertaining to that? Will Inland Revenue accept, or Inland Revenue will further challenge, or does Inland Revenue do further tests? We'd like to hear from Dr. Johns on the internal assessments when it comes to documentation relating to traveling expenses for networking with clients. Over to you, Dr. John.
Yeah, basically we talk about traveling expenses. I agree with Mr. So. You have the one who claim they have to justify. For example, if you travel to Europe, for example, we have to do sometimes we have to do some reasonable tests on the taxpayer. For example, if your company is I don't know, for example, if your company is running a restaurant, for example, a restaurant maybe in KLCC, but when you go to Europe, you say you want to go to look for an expo and other thing that is not related to your business activity. So that is where we will trigger question marks. What is the purpose of this travel? Because your restaurant in KLCC are selling, for example, Asian foods, Asian products, and all that kind of related to the Asian culinaries. But when you go to Europe, you go to Italy, for example, and you go and visit a certain place like Vatican City or this kind of thing. So it doesn't make sense. It won't jive with the so-called traveling for business purpose. So that is where we're going to query more on that. So
Okay.
it's always, when we look at the traveling expenses, of course, it's quite simple in a way, but when we do the audit, we will look at it as a whole, whether it's related to the business activity or not.
Okay, so let me bring it down to local a little bit, under
Yes,
SME's
yes.
context.
Okay.
Sometimes the travelings may be petrol toll parking and some little traveling here and there to Ipoh or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and then they say, oh, I'm actually going to meet my customers. What is normally is the inner revenue best judgment when it comes to auditing that particular type of items, and normally what does the inner revenue hope to hear from the taxpayers when they looked into this deductibility of the expenses?
Yeah, first and foremost, they have to keep the records, definitely. And then the second one, we look into it just now, whether it's the purpose of that payment, for example. Like when you say, most of the time, we always go back to the main activity of the business. For example, if the activity is in Pahang, for example, doing mining. So doing mining in Pahang, for gold mining, for example. But it looks like this one particular director, for example, always drive to JB. Always drive to JB saying for business purpose and this kind of thing. And then, of course, we will need to clarify further what's the purpose of the visit to JB. And then the payment being done is always based on credit card, and they're always charged to the 5-star hotel, for example. So we need to see further on that. But at the end of the day, we always try to mitigate, actually. We don't really say that, oh no, you go to JB, it's far from Kuantan, so we are not going to allow all. So that is not the way, actually, we want to induce compliance with the taxpayer. Normally we just discuss with them and talk with them the reasonableness of that expenses, actually.
Yeah, maybe I could add on as well. From my experience with the tax audit, I also see the inner revenue pay a lot of attention to the revenue. Yeah, sometimes they test check and understand the revenue, where your invoices go to when they look into the expenses. And sometimes they use that as a benchmark to actually fact find on the traveling expenses also. So taxpayers, you need to pay attention to all this within your account itself. Would you be able to justify the deductibility? Now, I have good questions coming from Sean Un that asked this question. Receive audit letter, request for source document provided accordingly within the timeline. Thereafter, no response from the inner revenue at all to confirm if the audit has been completed. Question, does it mean the case is still open or the case is closed? Dr. John?
I mean, the next day, of course, the next day we won't be able to give any decision. But yeah, I think that is where I understand some of the problem faced by the taxpayer. I think this one has been raised during our last session with Mr. So during the sitting meet, I think early this year, I think. Yeah, we understand that even if myself, if I give document to other party, but the other party never respond, I have received your document, I also feel like a bit jitter and then kind of uneasiness with me. But it is good that if the taxpayer or maybe the tax agent just try to engage with the audit officers, maybe email the audit officer, have you received my document? But from the last meeting, Mr. So, when we faced that question as well, we have already put that query to our top management, saying that we need to address these matters. We need to tell our audit officers, or maybe tax investigation officers, to acknowledge whenever they receive the document from the taxpayer, please reply, yes, we have received, or at least make a phone call or any. The best thing is email. Then to clarify that you received the document, because we understand some of the documents are quite sensitive in a way. like agreements and like, you know, purchase from certain specific supplier, kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, we understand that, Agnes. I will propose this one again to our top management, saying that we need to be a bit we need to react a bit on this actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think from
yeah, Mr. So?
taxpayers' perspective, my advice is we are all having all our work what you call that brought down. So
Yeah.
it's good to continue engage with LAGN. So this is a part that I know some taxpayers may say, I've given already, so it's up to IB to get back to us. But I think putting that aside, it will be good to engage. And the purpose is having engaged. If assuming the revenue has reviewed all the document, the revenue at the end may give a clearance in that manner, you know. Yeah, but without the engagement, then you wouldn't know what is the position and status. Yeah, that would be my comment on this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. So. Thank you, Dr. John. So basically, to Sean Un, the question is the case is still open. Yeah, so you have to follow up with the officer for it. Now we have a question for Anonymous. Is the stoppage order imposed by Lembaga Hasil against director, not shareholder? How to lift it? Yeah, Dr. John, would you be able to take on this particular question? The stoppage order.
Stoppage at the airport, isn't it? Section 104, basically.
I believe this one, yes.
Yeah. This one we do have our own procedure on this section 104 stoppage to leave the country. But usually the director or the taxpayer who face this problem, normally they have a certain amount of tax that has not been cleared with us. So we use this, we impose this, and we ask we get us help from immigration officers to stop them from leaving. So one of the ways to get a release from this actually is just to contact our office and then discuss with our officers. I think it should be our collection officers, tax collection officers, to discuss with them how we want to go about it. Now I'm not so familiar with the latest procedure over there, but as far as I'm concerned, last time maybe the taxpayer had to pay a certain amount of tax
partial
before they can partial payment, maybe around, not second, around 30%, 20%. I'm not so sure, but
okay.
there is some leeway actually, but it depends on the reason for the traveling as well. For example, if the taxpayer had need to fly to Singapore, for example, to have a medical treatment or maybe to have an operation for the wife, for example. So normally we will mitigate on that.
Okay.
We are not that really stringent on that actually, because but as long as, like Mr. So just now mentioned, please come and engage with us, and then we will look into that matter.
Thank you, Dr. John.
Yeah.
Mr. So, anything to add on this particular one?
No, I mean, I totally agree with Dr. John. Of course, for those who want to travel, one advice, if you are aware that you have outstanding taxes, then engage with the revenue. If you're talking about difficulty of payment, some schedule of payment, but maybe those that may not be aware, may be caught by surprise to a certain extent, then I think based on what Dr. John has mentioned just now, there are ways to how to leave it up, and what Dr. John has suggested.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. So. Maybe at Syarikat Ong, we handle SMEs. So sometimes we have this kind of situation. I don't know, but recently we have not been handling it, but we had experience before. I don't know whether the position is the same. So taxpayer Anonymous, you may wanted to find out more, is whereby you need to quickly run to the collection department, negotiate an installment, and surrender your installment check, in fact, And normally the negotiation cannot be more than 6 months, the installment. If the officer require a bank draft, that will be another situation. If they accept check, that will be another situation. It's depending on case-to-case basis and the reason of travel. After that was obtained, you need to quickly run to the Bukit Aman. You need to go to Bukit Aman. I can't remember why, but we had to go to Bukit Aman and then get another letter, so-called like a release or something, and then go to the custom at immigration, and then only you'll be granted a departure from the country. So it is quite a procedure, but maybe it has changed now. Maybe it has changed now. So this case was quite a couple of years back. I mean, quite a few years back already. So the procedure may have changed. So basically, like what Mr. So has mentioned, as a taxpayers, actually we know whether we have tax to be paid. So the Indian revenue with the digitalization, big data, etc., a lot of things are linked. A lot of things has been systemized. So things like this is getting more and more efficient. Okay. So Mr. So, we will let this question to go on, because I think we are very honored to have Dr. John with us. So there are still a few questions I run through quickly. Maybe our session will eat in a little bit of a time. But for the participants, please stay on. If we stay more than 12:30, maybe 12:40, hopefully you are still with us, because we wanted to spend this morning as a tax day. So, okay, the questions from Anonymous again. If running online business, purchase goods from different country and get different type of language and invoices, source document again, those invoice purchase proof are valid. How to justify which valid for taxable, for taxation purposes? So maybe Mr. So, you want to take on this one. I believe the earnest of proving is still on the taxpayers, isn't it? I mean, Mr. So, maybe you want to take on to this one.
Yeah,
It's
and that's,
multiple
I agree with
documents.
you. When you talk about multiple document, I think they are talking about purchase of goods, right?
Yes,
So in
from
this
different
case,
countries.
in my view here is those invoice, yes, it is a proof of valid, but on top of that, sometimes we also may have to show the payment as well, not just the invoice purchase, especially even though it's a different country, whether it's a related or not, some of this consideration would take into account in that sense. So generally, when you purchase, you have an invoice, you show the payment, that is good enough to justify, for tax purchase purposes in that sense. Of course, practical issue, I think someone also raised earlier, what happens if the invoice is under the personal name?
Yes, correct.
So then, if you go by the strict interpretation of section 33(1), wholly and exclusively incurred in the production of gross income. So if it's under the personal name, then I think additional documents are required. What do you purchase? What business are you in? If you are in the business of trading, say pen, then you are able to show that, yeah, I'm buying pen to sell pen under my personal name. I believe it's still justifiable. But you are selling pen, but the purchase is shown as a perfume, then I think you have a reason to explain to the IRB, you are in the business of trading pen, yet you buy perfume. What is it for,
Yeah. When it comes to source document, this is a personal questions. Allow me to be asking the questions.
Okay, fine.
Now, sometimes because sometimes the foreign purchase, they got to put the personal name. Okay, they got to put, but at the address, sometimes we will say, why not you do care of the company name and then the address, etc. If this is for company use, we are not talking about, it's not for company use. We're talking about this purchase. Maybe it's a computer or some IT equipments, okay, that I purchased in for the purpose of the business. But due to how the documents is handled from the supplier, the attention will always have to be on the personal name. Okay, so but in the address part, instead of directly say Jalan whatever, to also have the company name and then send to the company or whatever. And then of course, the proving of usage is still a very important. That is still more important than the document itself. Document is only half a battle won. You have not won the battle, taxpayer. You still have another mile, which you have to prove that the usage is actually for the company. So would that actually strengthen a little bit when it comes to document, when we do a care of the company address, this item sent to office address. Dr. John, as part of the proving.
Yeah, of course, it will help. Like you mentioned just now, and like Mr. So mentioned just now, the substance of that purchase is more important. The usage of it and the purpose of the purchase. The invoice is just one part of it, but we would love to see whether, for example, if we purchase the machinery, the machine has been really used by the business, and then to confirm that it's not used for personal purpose, and then it's claimed by the company. It's not claimed by the other party. We don't want it. If you purchase under personal, for example, you claim again under the company, and at the same time you claim under your sole proprietors.
Okay.
So that's the thing. We will do some verification of that also.
Okay,
yeah.
We have so many questions coming from the participants, which is good. So some of these we probably will have to tackle it later on between myself and Mr. So, I believe, because we still have Tuan Zaidi, who is actually in the audience already, and then would like to be able to come on. So the last question is that, hello, Tuan Zaidi, yes.
Hello.
Yeah, so Tuan Zaidi, allow us to maybe have 1 to 2 more questions from the Lembaga Hasil, yeah? Yeah, so, okay. There is this interesting questions from Jane Poon. Yeah, maybe this question will be on personal tax. On personal tax. Hello, are there any tax payment require MM2H holder to pay onwards? So I believe he's referring to MM2H holder who is actually earning income. Yeah, for Jane, basically taxes is only required to be served if there is income, generated in Malaysia.
Yes.
So maybe I will pass these questions to Mr. Saw first. MM2H holder. The status is MM2H holder.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, Agnes. When we talk about paying income tax, is what income you derive. In this case, if it's a personal, then derivation of the income exercising any employment, perhaps things like that, you have to pay the tax. That's my short answer, Agnes. Yeah.
Okay. Dr. John? Dr. John?
Yeah. First of all, I think Malaysian tax, we are based on territorial basis. So based on back from Section 3 of the Income Tax Act, the tax is already imposed on all the tax earned and derived in Malaysia only. So once you earn in Malaysia, then of course you have to pay the tax. That's the thing. So it's just a short one, I think.
Okay. Now, last question is on deductibility, audit related. Geraldine Wong, for a sole proprietor, right? Is the inner revenue accept? Basically, these are more like a rule of thumb deductions without declaring anything. 1/3 or 2/3 of total petrol expenses for business expenses, business use, if detailed breakdown is not easily obtained.
Okay. When we talk about 1/3 and 2/3, okay, now we talk strictly about the income tax law. There's actually, to be honest, there's no such thing as 1/3 or 2/3 adding back. It's either we allow all or we add back, disallow all under the law. But it's quite understood that why is 2/3 and 1/3. Basically, it comes based on the facts of the case. When we look at it, for example, if they claim for petrol, for example, you are selling, wonton mee at a stall. For example, your turnover say 200,000 per annum. If your petrol, I mean, the percentage of that petrol you claim say it's really reasonable, normally we will just allow. But one thing that trigger actually, if for example, if your turnover is 200,000, then the petrol you claim is say 40,000. That is the thing we will query. Why is it 40,000? It's almost how many percent? Almost 20% of your turnover. So please explain. So that is the thing. I mean, of course, we will do cross-checking based on the revenue. Like you said just now, we start from the revenue. or the taxpayer. And then we see all expenses related to it to check on the deductibility of the expenses. Yeah.
So thank you, Dr. John. Thank you, Mr. Saw, as well as to all the participants. I think these tax audit cases is evergreen topics, to be very honest, because to be very honest, I personally foresee in the year 2022 and onwards, there will be even more active auditing that will actually be carried out between the Inland Revenue on the taxpayers to ensure compliance, etc. You know, to also move the economy forwards, So whether you prove by documentations, the documentation, the record keeping, or as small as sole proprietorship for the micro SMEs, you do your proportionate formula deductions or whatever. Inland Revenue today, unless they come out in a ruling or a media release to say that they accept, otherwise, I believe it's still a very judgment review approach, and then it requires educations on both sides. Yeah, this appear to be the stance that I'm seeing from the Inland Revenue nowadays. I personally have experienced improvement in the Inland Revenue questions as well, to be honest, Dr. John. Yeah, I can see that the questions coming from the officer is getting more and more competent, very competent, and then citing of the law. Some of our letter is citing of the actual legal cases. Yeah, when talking about certain expenditure. So participants, for your information, this is behind the scene between the tax authority and tax consultant like myself and Mr. Saw, right? So whereby the letter that we are dealing with between us and the Inland Revenue when it comes to the audit review cases on the tax disputes, right? Actually, the questions, the way that they put forward why they are doing the adding back or whatever, they are also proving themselves and giving the reason why they are doing so. So this letter is also demonstrating the maturity of the Inland Revenue Board, and it also required the taxpayer to even keep better documentations in proving your cases onwards. Now, there are a lot of questions coming in. Ladies and gentlemen, not to worry, because we have a sessions that is with Mr. So, whereby we will be going through the questions, and I promise you, we will run through them and we will answer them all, okay? So, Mr. So, we two of us have a tall order later on, okay? So, Dr. John, thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah.
It is our honor, to actually
you.
have you, I can't believe we already spent 1.5 hours, just by just have a quick chat, and we would like to actually have more engagement with the Inland Revenue as well. So, and Inland Revenue, please also educate the public more. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dr. John. Thank you, Dr. John.
Okay,
So
thank
we
you.
will now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. John. See
Yeah,
you.
thank you, Dr.
Have a
John.
nice day.
See you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Agnes. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. So, Mr. So, I will be welcoming you back later on.
Yeah, sure. I'll see you
Okay.
next time.
All right. So, Tuan Zairi, now, ladies and gentlemen, now we are actually having another sessions between ourselves as well as Tuan Zairi from the Royal Malaysian Customs Department. And Tuan Zairi has been joining us. This is the second year, Tuan Zairi? Tahun kedua. Second year. Yes, this is the second year. And then we look forward for like more sessions with Tuan Zairi from here on. Yeah. So Tuan Zairi is almost becoming an old friend already. So okay, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, not to worry about the income tax questions. Yeah, if you do have, continue post it onto the chat room. Later on, myself and Mr. So will pick up those questions one more time. Okay. So right now we're going into indirect taxes with Tuan Zairi. Tuan Zairi, the first questions that I wanted to actually touch on is in the budget proposal 2022 announcement. It was announced that the Royal Malaysia Customs will actually be implementing the Special Voluntary Disclosure Program, the SVDP. Could Tuan Zairi able to elaborate further on this custom initiative and to our audience, and what is Royal Customs expectations when it comes to this SVDP? This is the second time Malaysia run SVDP, but this is the first time Customs is running SVDP. Over to you, Mr. Tuan Zairi. For your information, ladies and gentlemen, Tuan Zairi is very kind to even provide slides for in order to provide information on SVDP. Dipersilakan.
Okay, thank you, Ernest. Thank you. So, first of all, I would like to say many thanks to organizers, Ong Company Ong, to inviting me in the second years of this participation business and tech conference. Then I thought is very important for any tech agencies involved to listen a new current development on taxations. As what has been said by Mr. Agnes, Ms. Agnes, one of the development is SPDP program. I would like, if you don't mind, I would like to share my slides. Okay. Have you seen my slide?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Let me put a heavy intention on this latest tech development, especially on SPDP, where we call it a special voluntary program, where just a quick, let me digest our minds before we go further on what is SVD about. What is the rationale introducing this program? Okay, what happened to our country? What happened to our taxpayers? What happened to our imported exporters? Does the government trying to strengthen the fiscal elements, and for what reasons? What happened to our tax GDP ratios? And what happens if tax GDP ratios doesn't meet the expectation what has been drawn by World Bank? And what happened to our tax gap issues? And now, what is the value of tax gap issues? And the important thing is, in terms of tax gap issues, where are we now? Does tax gap issues harms our Malaysia reputations in terms of the Malaysia, what is it, Malaysia one of the highly developed country? And what is the level of compliance? Does level of compliance questionable? What happened to our enforcement, especially for custom? What happened to taxpayers? I mean, the level of compliance. And what happened on our hidden economy? Does hidden economy is very huge? Hidden economy is very become larger and larger from time to time. Is it any things intelligent regime? And why we should participate? And finally, last but not least, what are advantages for taxpayers? These are the questions that should be understand deeply in order to make sure our taxpayers, government agencies, and others, regulators, taxpayer, importers, anyone in the, we call it the keluarga Malaysia, that is we say keluarga penguncur kaya, I mean the family taxation, must do rational why we have to come to in this special voluntary disclosure program. And now, the next slide is just a little bit countries. How many countries does already implemented this VDP? Argentina, we call tax amnesty. Azerbaijan, Brazil, Chile, Greece, India, Indonesia, Italy, and Kazakhstan, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Romania, Russia, Sweden, and Turkey. And from Turkey is special word, we call it a forgiveness provision. The rest, voluntary disclosure, amnesty is already done by all this country. Okay, what is the message of this country? I mean the implementation of this country. Sweden is a developed country. Norway is a developed country. And Netherlands is a developed country. And Canada is a developed country. And Indonesia is called it mid-developed country. And Italy is developed country. The combination between the developed country is in trying to proceed implementing this program. We call it disclosure of tax program, disclosure of tax understatement, voluntary disclosure or amnesty. This means nowadays, currently, all of this country is going to proceed this program due to this One, to strengthening the fiscal policy, to increase the level of compliance, to close the hidden economy, the hidden revenues, and it try to increase the revenue for the government. All right, this is one of the issues that we need to digest and deeply why we should have, because sooner or later, as you know, that special intercurrency program will be implemented in the 1st January 2022, and is advantageous. It's a good approach, beneficiaries very huge for any state player to come join in our special voluntary disclosure program. Okay, the next question is, does any country international practices request coverage this special voluntary disclosure program? Okay, let me see. International concern, voluntary compliance framework, where voluntary compliance framework already implement, already suggesting, already encouraging to all custom nation, not just the inland revenue, not just the custom, but both to improve the level of voluntary compliance is one thing. Secondly, we say we have tried comply voluntary and correctly with custom law. There is a follow the law, not thoroughly, but in honesty, with fully integrity. There is a as the result of this full integrity, the level of compliance for sure will be increased. Later. And for the government as custom, as the regulators, will be more effective, more efficient, and more transparent. And that is a snapshot, special program. In detail, we are waiting the approval from MOF. But in general, the objective of a special program is try to increase the revenue, the strengthening the tax GDP ratio. As we mentioned, our tax GDP ratio is lower than 30%. What does it mean? What does it mean? It means that our enforcement, our revenue is very low. That's why, if I'm not mistaken, IMF is now suggesting introducing MTR, as we call it, a midterm revenue strategy to increase our tax GDP. And then in order to increase tax GDP, it means suddenly, indirectly, subsequently, the tax economy, the hidden economy will be closed, closed. And secondly is minimize risk in the future tax audits, increase the compliance. That is for sure. When you come forward to us, there is advantages really help in fits. Come forward to join this program. And then we have a phase 2 phase. One phase is 1% remission of penalty, and phase 2 50% remission of penalty, and remission of tax will be considered on the case basis. And the scope of tax will be confirmed later, but probably import duty, excise duty, custom duty, all the tax will be considered with you on the in the special program. I think there is a special program that the what I think there is.
Apparently that there are participants who say that your voice is not clear enough. Maybe Tuan Sali need to increase sikit the volume.
All right, okay, wait, I try increase.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, dear participants, we have
The
increased the
participant, do
volume.
you with my voice? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah.
Once again, government has a very potential, have a very planning, a huge planning for the measures, and now to strengthen the fiscal element, especially on the national revenues. Special voluntary program is one of the prestigious program for the all taxpayers. What you should do? Maybe this is a program where I would say you come forward to us in faith and looking pay the tax. Even you have any what call it? I see tax avoidance. We close our eyes. We close our eyes. What we wanted is The rationales in this program is trying to increase the fiscal element, to increase the tax GDP ratios, to close more deep on the tax gap. As we know, the tax gap maybe maybe 70 billion, And then is it a new thing on taxation regime? No, it has to be done by Argentina so many years, as well as RB also done in 2017. And then what the advantage of taxpayers, once again, I'm saying here is you are participating in our program. This means you are one of those honest participant. You are really appreciate on this in joining our program. I think there is in general special volunteer leadership program SVDP. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Zaidi, on this presentation. In fact, I wanted to maybe help everybody to ask these questions.
Yeah.
Just now, Tuan Zaidi say close one eye. Is it? Yeah. So can we actually understand this a little bit better? So if I come forward, yeah, under the special voluntary program, I come forward for the program, and then of course the custom will actually treat me as an honest taxpayer, right? Because I am here, wanted to make things good now. So will my submission be accepted on good faith? Number one. Number two is, what are the other documentations that I probably have to get ready just in case there is a review? Number two. Number three is, what if for some reason it was found that I may not be as honest as I looked? What actually, under that kind of scenario, what will be the customs potential review measures onto this type of taxpayers?
Okay, Agnes, a very question. I think these all participants wanted to know what is the I mean, not solution, but the expectation from custom. Okay, let me say, one is the pay come forward to us in faith, right? We accept all the computation, all the values, all the particular. That's all. We never argue what is the story behind. Maybe I don't want to say, but maybe it's not evident, whatever. What wanted is in faith. We accept all the computation, all the declaration. That's all. Okay. First. Secondly, documentation. What I see is documentation. For example, let's say as a forfeit and loss, tax return. Just proceed. That's all. Listen, we don't want to any maybe some documentation as usual what you did before, what you do today. I think tax return, any evidence, as usual. Proceed. And then in terms of the procedures, the beauty of this program is between the phase 1 or phase 2 is no audit will be come to your office. No auditor will come to office. No custom officer will be coming to your office. Why? Because during this period, during this phase 1 and phase 2, all taxpayers who involved, who participating in this program will be given a certificate. Will be given a certificate of joining this program. It means during this period, no auditing will be done. I think that is very clear. So what we wanted to know, I will say, the taxpayer come forward to us with honest, with integrity, and we are willing. We very happy. One must welcome to receive all the comment within faith. Whatever declaration we don't want to know. Just come forward to what, come forward to it, just declare. That's all. This is expectation from our department. I think I answer your question, Agnes.
Right. So because I'm trying to be that something taxpayer, to ask this question. Inje Zairi, your connection is okay? Inje Zairi? Your connection is fine. Yeah, just now the connection. Yeah, I think you have answered the question. Thank you very much. This is a window of opportunity, right? And
absolutely.
Yeah, this is a window of opportunity for all taxpayers to actually come forward. Now, what is going to happen? I'm going to deep dive into this question again.
Okay.
For the purpose of all my SME clients as well as participants, right, who may feel shy to ask this sensitive question. What happened when we are out of phase 2? What happened when we're out of phase 1, phase 2? There is no audit. If I come forward to join the program. So what is going to happen on phase 3? So-called phase 3, meaning I out of phase 2.
Okay, let me say. Phase 1 is already gone. Phase 2 is coming forward, already done.
Yeah. And
come to phase 3. Where phase 3 doesn't any involve in SVDP. Okay, our business has usual.
Okay.
Our mean we are effectively doing our exercising our rules, our law, taking audit, propose penalty as usual before SVDP it was introduced, implemented. That is it. It's mean what we wanted to know, what we are urged to all the taxpayers, especially SME, because we know that SME is the effect on the coronavirus. We are very concerned. Yes, I know there is one of those my colleague where SMC having a burden of the business. Yes, really, they cover those, but the responsibility to pay tax still there. The responsibility to pay tax is still there. So cover to is what I'm going to say is, don't worry, be happy. Come forward to us. We help you. This program is beauty because this program is really encouraging to help your business. Actually, indirectly help your business. In fact, I would say, all custom in this program will say, in fact, we accept your all declaration without argument, without questioning. That's all.
Tuan Zairi, one of the commonly asked questions during the Lembaga Hasil SVDP to me, as a tax consultant, is this: what if I join the program? Am I pointing out my sotang that I pernah nakal? And then the pasitu, after phase 2, I become the subject of review all the time. So I think what Tuan Zairi was saying is generally it will be audit as usual. Am I right? Yeah, meaning there is no discrimination over whatever that's in the past. Is that what Tuan Zairi is trying to?
It means what custom should do is custom review must be fair. The fairness of taxation is a vital of the enforcement, especially of the custom and its tax agencies. In order to do so is during the phase 1 or phase 2, we don't want to listen. When you come to us, you submit declaration. We don't want to see your company anymore. They don't want to see. We want to audit anymore. Yes, we assume, but assuming that the company who come forward to us is a fully high integrity. It's mean voluntary disclosure. We are really some maybe tax avoidance we done. I think in fact we tutup mata. I think we accept. That's all. What wanted is one, trying to help the taxpayers according to the pandemic, and then we trying to indirectly we trying to increase our revenues. What happen increase our revenue, and secondly is try to strengthening our fiscal policies. That is one thing. And then the successful program is totally up to the taxpayers. It's taxpayers, and now we have taxpayer 40. I mean the for sales tax is 20,000. On the service tax is about 44,000. It means that the 60,000 taxpayers, excluding importer exporters. All right. is overall, I will say 400,000, 400 plus, okay, 450,000. If let's say monthly we collect, let's say this program we give a huge revenue, is good for government to outline the program for the rakyat. I think that is my answers, I think. Yeah.
Right. So taxpayers, basically the custom department want to turn the page. So meaning whatever in the past one time under this particular window of opportunity under the SVDP, they wanted to turn the page in order to actually move on.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think this is important. Yeah, this is important for taxpayer. I can see there are actually questions being posted. Maybe I will not take on to the question first, and then I'll move on to the next thing that I wanted to discuss. So regardless, after the SVDP, even though during the SVDP, if you take part in this particular timing, there is no audit on you, but doesn't mean that custom is not performing their review and auditing on taxpayers. Yeah. So ladies and gentlemen, I would like to pose these questions to Encik Zairi. Is custom active in performing audit review and investigation for sales tax and service tax matter on taxpayer? Because we know Lembaga has said they're very active. It's like their daily job. It's a daily job that they are doing that to ensure compliance, etc. But what about customs?
Okay, for all participants and for the beginners, auditing is one of the pillar of the custom administration. One of the pillar is one of the agency, one department that should be applied by all the custom administration in the world. Why? Initially, when import export companies declare declaration, and then the first officers trying to check whether it is correct or not correct. We call it the first line defense, and auditing is a second line defense. It means yes, for the first phase, let's say maybe the accuracy of declaration, let's say 70%, and then our department no check under 30%. It's a check balance whether declaration by taxpayers in order and follow regulation. And now for all participants, we are now auditing on GST, still GST, especially on GST refund. The very good news, I received one of those, as you know, that refund is one of those issues, main issues by all the taxpayers, including the Minister of Finance. Initially, what we do, there's some of the applicant of refund cannot be set up due to the one of them is the address of the refund we cannot meet the address of the QB. I have some information here. On the okay. Secondly, okay, one of this error in filling GST registration numbers for manual delivery, and then the errors due to the error is error declaring actual value amount, and then inaccurate export place. Okay. To answer your question is, we are still in managing the refund, and now Alhamdulillah, block-based taxpayers, we are struggling now from the many. I don't want to say the value of refund, but Alhamdulillah, block-based close my heart, and then the revenues pending less than 1 billion compared with so many billion. And now, but however, we still estimated between 70 or 80,000, 70 to 80,000 cases. Refund, yes, cases cannot be processed due to one, the address no exist. Secondly, the error filling in GST, and thirdly, due to the wrong MIC codes. This is cannot be wrong as a error failing in MIC codes, and then doesn't take into account adjustment. Okay, my advice to all taxpayers who are waiting the refund, still pending the refund, what you should do is, due to we cannot contact you because the different address, right? Different email, the changes of emails, maybe the changing of phone numbers. What the taxpayer should do, come forward to us. Please go to our office custom, asking this, help us, please help us to solve your problem. I know refund is one of the business, one of the code. If you refund is your money, please forward to us. We are willing. We don't want to keep your money too long. We don't keep your money too long because it's not fair for us. If your refund is totally is your money, come forward to us with some document, a verified document, and we are very happy. We are very happy to help. And now, alhamdulillah, sooner or later, hopefully, now the value refund less than 1 billion, maybe something like that. I think.
Wow.
That is my advice. Yeah.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is a very encouraging statements coming from customs directly to say that come forward. Yeah, we wanted to actually give you the refund. There is definitely be reason why the refund is actually not given to you. So we got to fact find case by case, right? Sometimes taxpayer conclude that, the duit tak akan datang for whatever. So I think, no, like the authority are mature enough to say, look, this is your money. This is your money. Yeah, please come forward so that we can actually process this for you. So both parties close the case. Yeah. So whatever other things that you hear on the outside, it's not important, taxpayers. You know why? Because Tuan Zairi is here. For your information, Tuan Zairi is also working very closely on SVDP, right? So Tuan Zairi, in addition to your CV that we read out in the morning just now, basically you are actively involved in the SVDP processes, isn't it? Yeah, Tuan Zairi? Yeah. So ladies and gentlemen, so we are actually having the right person sitting in the audience here asking the question. So, okay, now I can see that there are actually questions coming from the audience, which is actually regarding GST. So I think maybe we deal with that one later. Yeah. So, and then the one online, yeah, we'll do. So, participant, please continue. Please continue posting the question to we call him Tuan Zairi. Call him Tuan Zairi so that we could actually tackle your question here. Now, Tuan Zairi, when it comes to taxpayers, all right, so yes, the customs will actually do their audit, do their check, do their review. There are procedures to follow, and some of the audit are triggered because of the refund that actually had to give back to you, right? So basically, Tuan Zairi, actually one very important thing is how they actually approach. Sometimes it's telephone, tak dapat cari orang. Cannot find the person. So what is the best way to go, meaning go to any of the custom office, or is there any particular approach that's best contact the custom regarding to maybe refund or clear some of the pending issue?
Okay, let me explain what was happened during the 2017 and 2018 when we enforced CBOS. CBOS stands for Custom Blue Ocean Strategy. All right. Okay. I just taking this story before I answer your question. Okay. Okay. We have a CBOS 1, 2, and 3. What the story of the rationale we did CBOS 1 and 3 to ensure all the taxpayers who are claiming the refund exists. It means is a right person, is the cooperation is there, and then no hanky-panky, no fake application. Okay. What we found is some of the applicant refund, refund, company did not exist. We have, okay. For sure, we study the story, we study the issues, and now in terms of the this refund, we try to so many times. The best way in order to solve your problem and to give your money back, in faith, because I believe when we do in faith all business, this money belong to you. And once again, I would say, custom doesn't want to keep your money too long. And then it's your right to pursue your right. And now, come forward to us. There is a main issue. Sometimes we try many ways. We try Google, we try email, we are registers. At the moment, we don't receive any good response. So there is between 80,000 applicants still pending. Compare the previous one, 2007, maybe I will say 200,000, 500,000. And now we are directly slowly turn down the application, and let's say 80,000. And then the value of the 80,000 or 80,000 more, let's say, I would say 1 billion. It's very huge. So the best way, does custom don't do any responsibility? Does the custom do any responsibility? Yes, we already done by looking the email, by setting the letters, by register anything, but except the mass media. Mass media, we don't use any mass media. But however, in Turkey, any refund, we use mass media, especially in TV. In Turkey, you can read
Turkey.
this. Yeah, Turkey.
Oh, so it is
Okay.
like looking for a
Exactly. Yes.
criminal like that. I'm
Yes.
looking for you.
Yes, not just announcement the refund taxpayer, but also to taxpayer who don't want to pay the tax. In Turkey, you can read this document. You say Google OECD Tax Administration 2017.
I see.
www.oecd.org. Say Tax Administration 2017.
Okay.
There is a lot of information where all the government tech agency, I would say, tech administration, is trying to persuade the way, not just in case of bad debt, but in terms of gouging to all people, taxpayers, come forward to us. Now, this solution, the best solution, I think, taxpayers, refund, please come forward to us.
Yeah.
Please come to us, because it's your money. Maybe your money 2 million, 5 million is still your money.
Yeah.
With document, please, because we done so many actions, so many instrument,
Okay.
but the successful still very low. That is my suggestion. Our suggestion to all taxpayers: please do not hesitate to come forward to us. I think.
Okay.
No,
So
okay, go ahead.
yeah. So if you are part of the 80,000 people who's looking for
Something
a refund,
like that, yeah.
please go to the custom office, pay a visit, the Unity, etc. Now, very quickly, I just wanted to check with Inje. I can see questions start coming in, which is good. Yeah. So I'd like to ask Inje Zari this one question, and after that we go to the Q&A from the participants.
Okay,
Okay. Now, Tuan Zari, can you share with the audience generally what are the common mistakes that you see in the filing of SST? Maybe we start from common mistake from service tax first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before I answer the question, under OECD, you can check this to the common. OECD risk management for tax administration. For tax administration. There are two common mistakes. And I would consider this is a high risk mistake. High risk. One, the tax returns submitted to the tax agencies without payment. Right?
Okay.
Okay. Before I answer the question, this is a high. Secondly, didn't submit tax return and payment. Okay, what is common mistakes? Common mistake done by taxpayer, especially they may be confusing for the for service tax, especially on they try to common mistake is the taxable period supposed to be taxable period in terms of taxable period errors. It's very important to make sure to ensure the taxable period is correct. For example, period 1st January 2007 until 31st March 2007 set in April. However, company said wrongly in April 2017 is one of the second. The most important thing is error in declaring actual value of the service tax. Because why? The value of the good, the value as a bit is much important to see there is a service already given to the consumer, right? If the value is totally wrong, or a misdescription, a misdeclaration, I would say in custom law, in service tax law, is considered tax fraud. Is considered exactly. It's considered he's a criminal. Criminal. Because why? Do you realize that SST 02 is prescribed form? It means form already gazetted by law. Including any erroneous in the declaration, in the carrying of the amount of SS of service tax, as well as the service tax, must be accurate. And if custom asking about further on this value, and absolutely taxpayer must be ready with the answers. What happened if the declaration, the value of the good, the value of the services, let's say 1,000. However, he only declared 6,000. We are already deficited 400,000. What does it mean? It means, can I say it's a tax void? Common mistake, please. I will say this is very important message to all taxpayers. Please check and check again. We will submit tax return to custom. And we're very happy to accept the tax return with fully integrity. This is a most common mistake. And I think
right. Okay. So let us go to some of these questions that was actually posed in the Hopin chat room. Okay, our screen maybe is a bit different, Tuan Zaili. Maybe you have to go to maybe I'll just read out. Okay, this one I'm not sure whether we'll be able to handle it. Let's try. Okay, from Alwi Abdul Manam. He has a question on SST. Does an online marketplace has to register for SST if we treat our seller as our supplier? We collect from buyer full amount, then we pay the seller the cost amount. Basically, for Alwi, if you're talking about marketplace, these are trading, I suppose. I believe this is trading. Because service tax, we are talking about services lah. I'm not sure whether Tuan Zaili, when you look at this question, do you read around the same as what I'm reading here? It is actually not on trading. Yeah, Tuan Zaili.
This question written on the GST, is it?
I believe, and then he has another follow-up question to say: is there any plan for reintroductions of GST?
Exactly.
Yes,
okay.
yes, yes.
Let me answer in general.
Sure.
In newspapers, in mass media, always talks about does reintroduce GST is possible. Even FM also encourage the government to reintroduce the GST. And then I would say there is a different team. On my research on GST and my research on SST, there is a different levels of covering the taxation between both regime. And the SST, as we know, is a single taxation, and the GST is a cascade taxation. And there is advantages and disadvantages. What has been said by MOF, by once in newspapers, the possibility is there. I don't want to say is there will be pictures coming or 2 years or 3 years in the futures, but I would say the possibility is there. Why? Because in order to let's say in custom administration, or I say tax administration under 166 already implementing the GST OVEX. Only two countries, Malaysia and Japan, implementing SST. Okay, what we should do is follow international practice in order to get the same sound, the same aura, the same implementation. If we have some issue on the same GST, and then we easier to ask for Malaysia Custom for any justice to seeking the assistance from other country who implemented the same taxation. Is one thing. Secondly, is we are really much concerned on how much revenue should be collected. If everyone, every taxpayers, regulator or taxpayers, industry in the same group, I would say is a family taxation for the nation. Family taxation is good for us to come to cooperate each other in order to make sure everyone is touched. It will be touching one to another. Okay. Is it possible? Person say is in the international practices we should follow. In international practices we should follow in order to everyone is in the group. Okay. And then for on the other hands, the comprehensive, the enforcement is good, is very good. And on the other hand is we must be clear, we must be good in the cost administrative, especially on refund. If from our experience, say refund, in one of those issues should be administered carefully, must be managing carefully, because if you don't manage this refund carefully, I'm afraid two countries in the world, when they implement GST or VAT, these countries declare bankrupt. One is Manila, the second one is Sri Lanka. So you can read this information, right?
Okay.
I would say possible.
Okay.
Possible.
All right. Thank you, Tan Saidi. So basically to the participants, right? We came from GST and then we into SST 2.0, and we have a refund matters relating to the GST that we need to resolve, right? And then if ever reintroductions, I think administratively, things will also have to be resolved before, if there is any new phases of indirect tax regime, okay, it will actually have to become when things are like close chapter to chapter. So I think the refund is actually a very important thing to touch on. And then for Mr. Awi, generally your questions on the marketplace, I believe that one is relating to more of a GST questions, because if you're talking about trading or products on the marketplace, then it doesn't actually attract SST, right? Unless you are talking about there are like services, right, that will actually come into the picture. But then it's actually important to highlight, that in this particular budget, we do actually see that there are new taxes being introduced, right? Which is actually sales tax on low value goods. Sales tax on low value goods that will be imposed on goods that not existing 500 ringgit from abroad, sold online by sellers and delivered to customers in Malaysia, via their air courier services. So those are one of the potential areas. So it's equivalent to import duty. I mean, we call it a sales tax. And then on top of that, there are actually service tax being imposed on goods delivery services, right?
Yeah.
This is also something new, isn't it? That's imposed on goods delivery services provided by service provider, including e-platform, but however, it doesn't include F&B as well as logistics services. So actually, these are the two new things that we do see when come to online and marketplace. Tuan Zairi, anything to add on these two things? Yeah,
Okay,
it may be relevant to the next questions that I'm seeing in the chat room also.
Thanks, Agnes. In terms of the low value tax,
yeah,
we are in study before the implementation of this taxation regime is 1st January 2023. Is it correct? It's mean we are fine tuning to see what is the best for the market, best for the importers, and the one thing I want to ensure that we don't harm to any business mechanism. That is one thing. We are in the fine tuning to study deeply on the low value tax by looking at some of example from Australia. I think Australia also implemented this low tax value in many countries. Once again, we are ensure that by implementing this low value goods, it doesn't harm any importers, but what we wanted is to create more harmony in taxpayer. Is be fair. The taxation must be fair. I believe that, and then the treatment to taxpayers must be in full fair, also fair. What I'm going to say is we are fine tuning to see what is the best by looking at some example for Australia. And secondly, on this, what I call it, service tax for brokerage and for logistics and for the pandas, Grab. Okay. Is these let me say this is a new story to expand for those who are willing to have self-employees, right? You know what? How much revenues, how much salary, or how much we call it revenue? I will say revenue per month by person who are involved in Grab. This is a real story. Per weeks, not less 3,000.
Wow.
Yes, not less 3,000 Grab vendors. Okay, this is positive for who are not going to be magical. The employees want to work. Self-employees, it is good, especially for the as contractors. My friend involved in contractors, constructions, over 16 years. And then after pandemic come into pictures, PKP 1, 2, 3, and suddenly he was retrenched, and then he is self-employees. And then we sit down together, told a story, smoking, and something. He told me per week 6,000. And then what happened is the capacity family, the families we care on the families' hearts, families anything, and family for their occupation is a opportunity for those who want to join the Grab vendors. And then we are very happy. I support the government policy, the Grab. This is a good policy for those who are going to be self-employees.
Okay, right. Thank you, Tuan Zairi. Tuan Zairi, let's look into those questions. From Yi Ching Ao, please explain on how custom will tax and assess on the current government push for digital economy. What does digital economy means in custom definition? Yeah, so okay, maybe I just do a quick intro about this and then Tuan Zairi can look into it.
Okay.
So generally, we can see that the digital tax is actually in the picture for those who consume, right? That is subject to the how do you call foreign services that you subscribe. You got to pay your rightful withholding tax on some of these prescribed services. And on the supply part, on the foreign supplier part, they got to register if they come under service tax, and then they got to register. So maybe I now pose the question to Tuan Zali, regarding this?
Okay, thank you so much on what is the person Aging.
Yeah.
Aging on, there's a wonderful question. I didn't expected this question will become in this.
Yes.
Okay, let me back to the story. In 2017, World Bank come to MOF discussing on the digital economy. This digital economy is one of the part of measure which has been discussed under G20, G7, okay, 2017. And then you can read this information document where, it's not mistaken, the GDP of digital tax, the digital economy, is about maybe 20 billion GDP. And now, when one day I have a opportunity to ask one question to my colleague from World Bank, when we had some discussion and some capacity building, I asked, how does custom play the good role in order to implement the tax on digital tax? Okay, and currently what the answer was at the moment World Bank doesn't have any methodology, any measures to measure the digital tax economy. Now, we already know about the stocks sales tax on digital economy, and now we are what mean the meaning of digital economy is any instruments that doesn't cover instrument, let's say by internet, e-commerce, declaration by actually e-commerce, any service provided actually for Netflix, everything. This, if you study on, IPR, intellectual property right. Intellectual property, one of the ingredient of IPR is this one. It means the thing that cannot be grabbed, but already on the air. But what custom does, access is one. We contact, I just see, okay, we try to simplify the law in order to make sure all the potentials in the digital economy, especially Netflix or Google, whatever, and income issue, we try to simplify the tax regulation. Okay. Secondly, we involve, we encourage, we come forward to all embassies in the world to make sure in income nations to inform these services to their country. Thirdly, we inform all tax agents to inform that because I strongly believe the agent has so many clients, maybe on 2,000 clients, maybe to inform there is one assessment to see is particularly should be regulated. And thirdly, we come forward to the future's prospect digital providers. And now, there is a first phase. It means the first line defense. The second line defense is we do some measurement, we do some risk to see whether is there any potential digital tax. And then to answer the question by aging is we do some state survey, we do some research, we come forward to the potential services, and then how does the economy mean to custom division is some digital supply chain experience cross-border. For all participants and for organizers, this issue has been debated in WCO last month when I attended the meeting, which the issue will be rose by Japan Custom. And now we are struggling, we are stitching, we are researching, we are studying on how does the cross-borders in terms of digital supply in measures can be taxed. Okay. Very soon we will come up with some solution.
Right. So, dear participants, basically you can see that the tax authority, whether it's Indian revenue or whether it's actually coming from the customs, the digital economy is something that is in their mind. There will be a lot of things that is actually in the pipeline to actually come out in order to ensure that our tax are fairly paid. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I say that is a lot of time, Tuan Zaili, on the ground, the rakyat will always say, hey, why you text me? People are making money online. You know what I mean? Yeah, so there is a lot of this kind of like comments from the rakyat from the floor. So I think, ladies and gentlemen, the authorities are doing their measures and their pipeline to ensure it's fair, whether you are online or you are offline, right? The fair tax treatment, the fair tax measures is going to be are in place. Yeah, it's going to be in place. It may take time, but it's going to be in place. Okay. Okay. So, all right. Now, there are two more questions here. What I will do is I will actually take on the anonymous question first before Chan Heng Yuan, in the essence of time here. Okay, for company who using cost sharing within their group, for example, company A and company B. When company A wants to charge back to company B, does company A require to charge SST? I believe this question is relating to intergroup. Within the intergroup. So when there are these management fee flying around, then whether whether service tax apply, and then the situation when SST is being exempted lah. I believe the questions is along this way. So Tuan Zaili, would you like to enlighten us a little bit about this? Because I think if I may add on a little bit of a trickiness to the question, it will be because we know the law says if you have control, you have certain percentage, then within the intra-group, basically there is, however that you charge and back charge or whatever, you can actually have your exemption. Tetapi, there will be situation whereby mungkin common directors or whatever. Then, you know, so maybe Tuan Zaili, you can enlighten us on these questions and expand further.
Okay, this question is very technical, not just technical, but it's together with the law to ensure my information, the custom is very accurate, no misunderstanding, no avoiding any misperceptions. If you don't mind, I would like to reserve this question and I will throw the question to the floor and I will touch anonymous. Please call me because I want to make sure my informations is really accurate. It's very tricky one. Right?
So
I reserve the question, please.
Sure. So for anonymous, maybe what you do is you can actually leave your contact at the chat room, and then and then after that, or I believe my team is in contact with you for morning sign in, etc. You can drop a message to them as well, and then what we would do, we will pass on to Tuan Zaili, and Tuan Zaili wanted to know more of your informations. Okay. And then there is this questions from anonymous again. Micro online business become common if often import goods from overseas and sell to local market. That are subject to custom. How justify what goods subject to SST sales tax lah? I think they talk about import. It's based on value or any guideline. So again, the question is from anonymous. So online business, product coming in, and what is customs measures, and what are the guidelines, and what are the value subject to sales tax.
Okay, thank you. This is a very familiar question. Let's say we have physical importation, presentation from the export country to the imported country. There is a similar with how justify. What we wanted to know if the goods subject to the tax is good subject to tax, they say 20%, 5%, it must be declared, and is any guideline you should looking on the PDK Peta Tetap Custom, Peta PDK 2017, where there is some many information, the import duty, excise tax duty. Even the mechanism is different. One is business online, another is a physical mechanism. the PDK or the enforcement still same. Even you are coming from a business online, whatever you say. For example, there is a difference with the Korea. Korea is different because there's we are having a diminished rule, diminished values. Currently, if the values are below 200 ringgit, it doesn't cover 200 ringgit. Yeah, 200. Oh no, 500 ringgit. And the value of the good through Korea, I mean value low 500 ringgit is mean doesn't take to be involved. But the same things. Make sure this very important message to all taxpayers who are in the online business. Make sure your goods doesn't fall under sensitive good. I mean, if the good subject to AP, you must provide AP. If the good use some subject to the latest approval from other agency, you must be provided. It means any good is subject to the permit before importation must be submitted, must be provided. Unless if custom check, examine, and found that this good is subject to the permit or AP permit, definitely the taxpayer will be caught, the good will be seized, and then for sure either will be compound.
Okay.
We are encouraging all the taxpayers use this channel, each channel. Everyone, just doesn't matter. We encouraging one of the platform, but one thing, please, if the good is fall subject to the permit, please provide.
Okay. All right.
This
Thank
one,
you, Tuan Zaidi. Yeah, for the answer. So basically, yeah, when it comes to goods and etc., there are always a guideline. There are actually the numbers, you know, the coding for you to look at. And in the year 2023, there will be on the small value goods as well. So things like that, the guideline will be in the pipeline. So knowledge of customs is actually very important, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, it's actually going into online business as well.
Yeah.
Now, the last part, I'm also very watchful over time, but unfortunately, these questions are important. So I wanted to take on to it. Participants, I have very happy to tell everybody that Mr. Saw is willing to maybe extend his time a little bit to be with everybody slightly longer than 12:30 so that we can have time to tackle other questions that is on income tax matters, etc. So let me take on to the last bit of the question, yeah, dear participant, to Tuan Zaidi on rental question. Rental question. Interesting, rental question come under SST here, Tuan Zaidi. So, okay. Because sometimes maybe people get confused, maybe people get confused. Okay, when we are doing GST, of course, rental, you know, certain type of property, we do actually have this GST in the picture. Now, I'm going to pick both questions. One is actually from previously from Chan Heng Yuan. He says that if company provide rental to intercompany, where company wants to bill back the rental to intercompany who reside outside of Malaysia, like Hong Kong, does the company require to charge SST to them? So number one is actually rental. I believe these are rental of property. And there is another question which I just saw that was actually being posted as well from another person called Leong Chun Chao. Leong Chun Chao just posted that talked about company that rents many units of residential property. I believe these are Airbnb. And subject it by rooms to tenants and collect rental on a long-term basis. Yeah, so we'll need to register SST if rental collect above the threshold. So there are two questions here. One is the person who is actually doing this how do you call? I believe it's a tenant now. But then he charged the rental. He charged the rental to his intercompany. So he is not in the business of principal in the business of renting. He is not, neither is he hotel-based category. He is not. So that one, I believe is a long-term rent. The second one that was actually posted by Leong Chun Chao appear to me is still long-term rent, but he rent rooms. Yeah, he rent rooms, small rooms, right? So he's doing rooms-based renting, but it's still a long-term rent, something like an Airbnb. And he's asking whether he's come under service tax. Yeah, for everyone's knowledge purposes, why we link these two rental questions together is because under the there is a category under the service tax whereby accommodation provider is actually required to have the 6%. That is the category of hotel, ink, and lodging houses lah. Yeah. So, Tuan Zaidi?
Okay. They also are very tricky. Not tricky. This is one of the changes of business.
Yes.
You know, for example, I still remember when I was my colleague from University of Malaya with rented one house, and then he rent to student based on the room, and then it means one house has 10 rooms, something like that. Okay. I'm not familiar of this question honesty, because this is one of the, I would say, this is a new not mechanism. I'm not familiar of these issues.
Sure.
If you don't mind, I try to find. I reserve this question to find more issue to make sure the information given to my colleague. The question is. I know I really know he one of business is trying to get a full information. I will say I didn't discuss this question. I get to you to make sure my question, my answer is correct, and to avoid any misunderstanding.
Yeah,
okay?
I also try to maybe just to give clarification to them as well. And I hope that will actually be providing. But yes, please continue to give your contact if you wanted the information directly from Tuan Zaidi as well. For Leong Chun Chao, I think he quickly posted another one at the same time. Now, from our understanding, for the first one on the intercompany to the holding, to the company in Hong Kong, generally rental in general, it doesn't attract service tax already. It may attract GST, it may, okay, but we are not talking about GST here, we're talking about service tax. So it doesn't carry that element, okay? So, and secondly, is actually on to those who provide lodging accommodation. I mean, you are actually in the business of providing accommodations. Then yes, you do come under the service tax practice note on whereby 6% need to be charged. Okay. Yeah. Now, so that particular one, but then I agree with Tuan Zaidi. We still need to know the specific situation, because we can't generalize the answer for you, because your status, your licensing, etc., may actually carry other weights. And then the last question is from Leong Chun Chao that talks about what if I'm just managing in between? I think he fee charge to landlord. Now that is a service. That is a service, okay. So that is a service, and I believe that one will actually come under the service tax already, because under the service tax guide, a general providing or management, you're managing things, all right, that actually attract service tax. So there are three little questions within this rental related. Now, so what we would do is like this to protect the privacies of everybody as well. Now, participants, maybe my team, one of my teammates, would you be able to post our customer lines, to the Hopin chat room, for people who wanted to drop their questions, separately to us, for us to actually redirect it to Tuan Zaidi separately. So, and then we would like to be able to help as many taxpayers as possible to clear your doubt when it comes to indirect tax matters. Okay. Now, Tuan Zaidi, as a closing remarks, is there anything to tell the taxpayers who is in our audience today?
Okay, thank you, Ernest. As far as I'm concerned, we are already in the critical stage, and what in SBD program, once again, we invite, urge, appeal all the taxpayers involved in the participating in the SVD program because it give a very huge advantage. And then we believe in the spirit of the program measures. We believe on the spirit of the what call it, the family taxation. And then you should be cooperation between the regulators, tax administration, tax agencies, if it's the taxpayers. We are together for so long, and now there is a right time to sit together to make sure our program is in the right path and program is successful. And then I will ensure to all the taxpayers, we are ready to accept you. We are in faith. We accept all declaration in faith. We believe in the spirit, once again, the spirit of the Quagga measures. I urge to participate in SPDP program fully. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tuan Zairi. Thank you very much, Tuan Zairi, for your participation today. And it's our honor to have you already an old friend already. Yeah, so we look forward for more collaboration together. And then if there's any participants have any questions pertaining to it or even SVDP or other things, we will actually pass on and to help them. At the end of the day, we wanted to be able to be the drivers and to be the parties to assist in the compliance. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Tuan Zairi. So dear participants, I really appreciate your attention so far. Sitting down from 9:30 until now, and now the time is 12:09. So we will be taking a very quick 5 minutes break. So everybody, please have your coffee because we're gonna have another session with Mr. So Liang Sing from KPMG, whereby we will be discussing all the other questions that we have not answered and more. Right, as promised, one of the very important things that we will be discussing about will be the foreign source income, right? Yes, foreign source income later on part 3 of our discussion with Mr. So, and then also other questions that is already posted since yesterday, since Monday, we will be having those coming on all together. So, okay, stay tuned. Come back in 5 minutes. The time now is 12:10. Come back at 12:05. We will start on time. For those of you who just wanted to have a break, we have a little short sharing of the video coming along as well. So thank you, everyone. Be back by 12:15. Okay, welcome back everyone. Now the time is 12:15. Yeah, so it is a sessions between myself and Mr. Saw right now. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Now, Mr. Saw, we have lots to cover.
Yeah,
So
we will
let's
try our very best to cover, right?
Yes. Let's take it easy now, right? Okay. Now, it is actually good that we are actually having a very good participations coming from our audience, I would say, all the way from day one, in fact, day one to day two. So we wanted to be able to cater them, but beforehand, I wanted to be able to have our conversation starting from foreign source income. So allow me, Ms. Saw, to actually share what I have actually done as part of my presentation. Yeah, as part of my presentation during my sharing with the audience yesterday. Just give me a minute so that I can actually do the share screen. Hold on a second. Okay. All right. Now, okay, everyone will be able to see the screen. Okay. Now, Mr. Saw, you were actually on another conference yesterday, wasn't it? So anyway, yeah, so we actually shared to the audience regarding the media release that was actually done by Lembaga Hasil. Okay, so once we actually get this done, because we only have the Malay version. So what we did yesterday was we actually give our English translation versions. But then, of course, we specifically mentioned whatever that we translate or we interpret may subject to change as we go along. So, Mr. Song, coming from KBMG, I would like to be able to actually have these sessions with you regarding the media release that was actually given. But of course, we know that until now, the government has not come up with the actual implementation procedure. So there will be limitations on what we could answer. Yeah. So we hope that the participant can actually understand that there will be certain things that we will not be able to give you a very definite, but to the best that we can, we will give you. Okay. So what we did was we went through the media release. And then, we went through the interpretation. We know that the PKPP period is actually from January the 1st to 30th June. And we highlight to the participants that during the PKPP period, then we are talking about a gross of 3%, right? That is actually will be charged on income, foreign income that is going to be physically remitting back to Malaysia as proposed in the Finance Bill 2021. And we also highlighted here that there will be no audit review investigation or penalty on foreign income remitting back to Malaysia during this period, as the Inland Revenue in their media statement mentioned that it would be accepted in good faith. All right. And then we move on to actually explain, to actually say that the taxpayers, however, will still required to declare the money, that they have actually remitted in during this period of PKPP. So looks like it appears that they're probably allowed to do a one-time declaration over multiple remittance. We're not sure. I'm not sure whether, Mr. So, is there any further information on this particular part? Is there any?
Sure. Thanks, Agnes. Yeah, I think this one is one of the topics that attract the most attention in, I think, every seminars and webinars as well. And you are right. Yesterday I was in another seminar where we had the audience from MOS as well as IRB. And I also take a consideration that for all the seminars that I have attended in the past, new things has been brought up, new updates has been also shared. So I presume today, whatever we discuss, Agnes, will be as at today, whatever we discuss. So information that we get as at today, we can comment as at now. Things may change after today. So for those who's going to listen to our comment after today, please watch out for any updates from the IRB's website and all that. Before I go into this media release, and maybe you allow me just to touch on the proposed changes what is stated in the law or the finance bill, so-called.
Sure.
I think when we talk about foreign source income, FSI, there are two parts only that interest, I think, most of us. The first part is the para 28 of Schedule 6. Not sure whether you have happen to have this, but if reading from what I can see from my notes, this has been amended and left behind currently as the income arising from sources outside Malaysia and received in Malaysia by any person who is not resident in Malaysia. So this is a proposed change. So it's very clear that those that not resident in Malaysia continue to enjoy this exemption. So in the flip of it, you look at it on that basis, that means those resident in Malaysia, the key word that I would like to bring to the attention of the participant will be the word they use is income, number one, okay? Arising from sources outside Malaysia. So that is a second key point. And the third one is received in Malaysia. So take note, this is a proposed change. The other proposed change that pertaining to this is under the part XX of Schedule 1, where they talk about the income tax shall be charged upon the income of a person. Again, the keyword here is income of a person who is a resident, which is received in Malaysia. Another keyword, received in Malaysia from outside Malaysia from 1st January 2022 until 30th June 2022 at the appropriate rate, which is the 3% of gross. That's another keyword, of gross. So before I comment on the media release in that sense, so if you're judging from these proposed changes of this, what do you call that, finance bill, so what is important here is resident. So whether it's for individual, then Section 7 of the Income Tax Act will come in. That means the number of days that you're in Malaysia, and also certain scenario. When you talk about companies, is the management and control that become important, right? Then when you talk about income, then the issue now is from the Malaysian perspective is all income. And what is it stipulated in the Income Tax Act? Actually, practically, we talk about Section 4 of the Income Tax Act, 4A to 4F in that sense. Then the other, a lot of questions that we receive is that, what is gross income? That you remember the proposed changes, they talk about gross. So at the moment, from yesterday's webinar that I attended, at the moment we talk about the gross income means any direct expenses or any current year loss are not allowable. So therefore, basically a gross income in that sense. So back to income again, I'm sure a lot of questions has been posed. What happens if it's a capital? Yeah, so as also confirmed by the IRB, applying the concept of income in the Malaysian context of taxation, at the moment we talk about capital, then it's not taxable, right? So this is all I will share that is more on the theoretical part of it in that sense. So if you want me to comment on the media release now, I can. Then maybe I move on back to the para 28 later on. Now, if don't mind, you just share the media release again, Agnes. Bear in mind what I've just commented on the proposed changes to the law. And now let's look at the media release. Yes, I think Bahasa and then sometimes English, that may be a certain thing. So when we talk about this media release, then I think we are referring to the para XX of Schedule 1 that I just mentioned. So if you don't mind, you just move up to the first page, for example.
For the first page.
Right? To start off with. Is this the first page?
This is the first page.
Okay, okay. So of course, the keyword here, looking at that, the period, that is one thing. And we talk about the 3% of gross. I think that's how I've explained. Gross here means they don't allow any expenses or any losses currently in that period of time. Of course, the other part under C, there will be no tax audit, investigation, or penalty during this remittance. The other keyword to take note, the good faith in terms of that. So these are the keyword. Then the third one, I do agree with what Ernest has shared. The next page, Ernest, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Income that brought into, I think the bahasa one is dibawa masuk and the remit. So this also another key indication or key point.
Right.
And then talk about declaration.
What is the
there,
difference?
there will
of
be
sorry,
part
Mr.
E,
So.
yeah.
Yeah, the part D. What is the vast difference, whether it's in Bahasa, maybe you look at the Bahasa version. What's the vast difference between the bawah masuk and the remitted dalam?
Yeah,
Actually,
so
what is
this is a part where, of course, IRB was saying they're going to come up with some guideline
Sure.
or explanation note. If you ask my view, I think the practical consideration here is if we take literally receive, di bawah masuk, means the cash that you actually bank into the account, the cash that you literally carry over into Malaysia, or practical consideration that could be in a business sense, maybe some kind of contra, perhaps. And more towards a confusing side will be, now what happened when we talk about entity, a branch over outside Malaysia, where they maintain the what they call that money in their account, say in Singapore. But for accounting wise, perhaps that has been recognized or credited or booked into the account. So how do we go? I mean, I may not have all the answer, Ernest, but this could be some of the consideration that you just mentioned to me. What is the vast different interpretation that we can make from here, di bawah masuk and remitted lah, as far as now is concerned.
Right.
Question has been raised. Some the IRB explain with example. Some the IRB will just take a position and say, let's wait for guideline in that sense, you know.
Yes, correct. Okay.
So that is for D lah.
Sure.
So for E, make declaration, there will be a special form to be issued on this declaration. Again, IRB is saying that let's wait for update in their website. But the word here is that taxpayer are required to make declaration to join this one, not later. Okay, but I think the word here we use is are required. But if you look at bahasa, pembayar cukai perlu, that means you need to make declaration to join this PKPP selewat-lewatnya 30 days after the expiry of your PKPP. So in other words, you can remit during this 6 months period, but you are still required to make declaration, and you need to make by latest 30 days after the expiry of PKPP. So it doesn't mean that you're allowed to pay or to remit after six months. No. The remittance still within the 6 months, but this declaration must made to the IRB no later 30 days after the expiry of PKPP. Watch out for a special form on this, right?
Yeah. So F is interesting because the first reading of it sounds confusing. Yeah, the first reading of it sounds confusing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we are relying on purely the media release without the actual practical implementation of the whole thing.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Mr. So, anything on this particular one?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I agree with you. F, but literally, if you were to read it, means should there be any calculation of tax that you need to pay? I can only presume that they say that the arrangement should be made or ditetapkan, you know, for tahun taksiran 22 or 23 yang mana berkenaan where applicable. I can only imagine a situation where 2022 you may already be under CP 500 maybe, or you will already be deducted under so-called STD perhaps. So this additional thing that come in. So when you make that declaration, I believe that there will be more guidance to be out, but I can only think of is some people, when they want to pay, they may want to ask for installment, perhaps, because the amount may be too huge. So this is the part whereby, whether it is on the case-by-case basis for IRB to consider how many that we require or so, and the term of 2022 or 2023 may suggest that all this payment, if ever approval is given for your installment scheme, you need to pay up within this 2022 and 2023. That could be my personal interpretation, Ernest, but I think watch out for more guideline in terms of this. Right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So because everybody don't forget, this FSI doesn't just apply to individual per se. It's also include company. So company may not actually follow the calendar year basis year of assessment. So as a result, a statement like this, potentially this PKPP period may fall within your year YA 2022. It may actually fall within your YA 2023, right? So hence, this is where these differences is. So why this is mentioned? So because it doesn't just apply to individuals, pay attention to that. So item number G, why
G,
are they giving this statement?
No, because it's very clear. This is only for sources outside Malaysia based on the proposed changes of the law, right, Anna? So therefore, you look at the bahasa, tidak melibatkan pendapatan yang terbit dari Malaysia. It doesn't include the local Malaysian source. So that is ultimately the message in G.
Okay.
That's how I see it, see? Yeah.
All right. Now, this one is a controversial one. This one is a controversial one. Yeah. So we may not have interpreted correctly. Yeah, maybe it's a wider scope than what we are thinking as well. All right. So yeah, Mr. Song, over to you on this particular part.
Okay, if I were to read bahasa here, they say that selepas tamat tempoh tersebut, that means this will be after 6 months.
That's right.
So IRB will and SEMA and then analyze those information pertaining to the income of a resident who still keep this so-called income outside Malaysia, and they have this information from in bahasa they talk about perjanjian pertukaran maklumat. In English, I would interpret as exchange of information, may not be mutual agreement procedure because MAP, this one is talk about something else, more of the exchange of information. If you recall, Anas, during SVDP time, and IRB do have information. It is from the automatic exchange of information. That's where I think 100 over country has signed, and this platform, how I interpret is they are going to receive this information from the same source, which is the automatic exchange of information.
Okay, so may I just confirm, because they talk about pemastautin, so they're talking about residency status. So how would this exchange of information works?
No, if you look at the way how IRB works, when we talk about resident, individual or company in Malaysia, this is all under the IRB's purview, right? So then when we talk about exchange of information that IRB receive, now from the experience that we encountered during SVDP, IRB will receive report, report from Singapore, whether it's the central bank or whether it's the authority. That report would likely to have information, say for example, Agnes Wong, your IC number or whatever detail. Then that information will provide to IRB here to say that, oh, Agnes will have say 10 bank account, say in Singapore Bank, in that sense. So what IRB will do is based on that report, they know that it's Agnes Wong, then they will go into their system. Is Agnes Wong a tax resident in Malaysia? If answer is yes, then they will pull your file out and review whether in the past, have you made any declaration in anywhere? Now, when I mention about declaration here, maybe to majority of audience, when I comment on individual perspective, very likely maybe you may be thinking of submitting of tax return, right? But if we talk about experience during SVDP, it is not just focused on submitting of your tax return only. When you talk about SVDP at that time, there are cases that in order for us to justify or in order for us to make an offer at that time, for SVDP, we may have to prepare what we call net worth analysis or capital statement. And this is the part whereby if some taxpayer during that time may have included some of this so-called foreign source into their capital statement computation. A lot of questions have been posed during that time is it taxable or not, all this foreign source? My answer at that time is no, it's not taxable. But for the purpose of capital statement, IRB is not looking at your income per se only. IRB is looking at your net worth as what the description mentioned, meaning whatever income or source of income you receive must be equal to what you spend, what you invest, and what you save. So IRB expectations for a capital statement is if you do have bank account overseas and you are saying these are all foreign source at that time, I'm saying, then for the purpose of capital statement, you are still required to put it in, but at the same time, the same amount which you have overseas, you are allowed to put in as your available income, so that it can actually balance or support your source of fund. Where is your source of fund to purchase property, this and that? So scenario that can happen in that context is that your foreign source at that time are totally outside Malaysia, and your available income are totally able to support. So there is no discrepancy per se. That's one scenario. Second scenario is you have bank account outside Malaysia, but then when it comes to your available income, somehow or other you are short somewhere, meaning compared to what you declare, for example, in Singapore for taxes, somehow or other cannot tie. Then for SVDP purposes at that time, the differences, they may use that as a base and say, okay lah, I cannot tie, let me pay the tax and close the case, in a sense. So the second scenario will have a situation that taxpayer may have already paid some taxes, based on that scenario for the foreign source income, perhaps, because they are not able to have documentation to support where this source or when is this source being created, example. Now coming back to now with these changes, I can foresee a practical issue now whereby under the second scenario, the taxpayer may claim that I have already paid tax, on a certain portion of my foreign source.
Yeah, I already paid tax in Singapore.
Paid tax in Singapore, never mind. I also paid tax under the SVDP. So now with these changes of this law, and now if I want to bring the fund coming in, am I going to be taxed again?
Wow,
this is a very practical issue,
Very practical, very practical.
Very practical. So of course you ask my view from a practicality and from the equality of tax, for example. Technically, an income should only be taxed once, not twice. So now assuming the IRB now during this period accept this explanation and perhaps coming up with future guidelines, maybe to allow, say, okay, this portion, I will not tax it again, assuming. Now, can you imagine what sort of document that you need to produce to make IRB satisfied that that portion I actually paid tax then already? Again, is a practical issue.
Yes.
You see that? So for that, to explain this para, that's what you just mentioned, why IRB or why is the tax residency come in? I think that is more on administrative to check the local company or the resident individual, your tax file, if you have sources outside Malaysia, are you able to prove that is actually sources outside Malaysia or sources inside Malaysia that you didn't pay tax? Because that will explain the next para, if you notice. Because the next para in Bahasa say, if I have received this information from the exchange different, and sekiranya berdasarkan sekhmakan, didapati pendapatan yang disimpan di luar negara yang berpunca dari Malaysia masih belum dilaporkan, means this para is suggesting based on the exchange of information, if after I check, I notice that this income that you keep outside Malaysia, the source originally from Malaysia, then I can raise additional assessment already because that is the income that you did not report. This is the para that it meant, how I interpret.
Yeah. So ladies and gentlemen, simple wording, not easy to implement to prove the case as well, right? So there are so many things in this very small foreign source income, maybe even more than some of the participants' questions that we have.
Yeah.
Right.
So that is just on the statement only.
Yes.
So now if you were to try to go back to some of the example that we can think of, I can only maybe classify, let's start with individual first, perhaps. So individual, maybe youngster, I think recent newspaper mentioned a lot of people are trying to explore work outside Malaysia, better prospect, blah, 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 and all that. Now, assuming I take Singapore, for example, people from Johorian, I think a lot of them may be working there. So this may be a group between 20s, 30s, where they may have parents in Malaysia, but they go to Singapore and work. So now question will be, those that they earn and they remit back to Malaysia, is it taxable or not?
Yes, that is a question that we have as well.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
meaning I'm still overseas, but I remit to my parents.
Yeah, so the question here will be, if I were to look at the proposed changes in the law talk about income arising from sources outside Malaysia, received in Malaysia by any person. So scenario number one, I'm as a very quiet son, I work already, I give to my mom. So again, we go back to the principle subject to IRB's guideline. The principle here is income. So is that money that you give to your mom or your dad, is it an income or not to your mom and dad? If you ask my view, it is a gift. So if it's a gift, it doesn't fall under the section 4, of the Income Tax Act. So by interpreting that, then my answer to that at the moment, subject to IRB's further guideline, is not taxable. However, I give you another scenario. Again, practical scenario, but I'm not alluding to anything, but I give you another practical scenario. I may be still single, at the age of 20s or 30s. Yes, I want to give to my mom or my dad, Ernest. Yes. But then I don't want to give all, You see? So what happened is I transfer that money that I want to give monthly into my account first.
Okay.
Then only I give maybe 50% to my mom. Then I give my mom the ATM card. Mom, you go and withdraw, but it's from my account. Now, judging from the law, you are actually remitting into your own account. No? The question here is, if you are facing with authority, then you are trying to tell the authority, no, there's a gift to my mom. Now, you got to ask yourself, how are you going to prove that? I don't have answer, but it's a very practical issue. Then the question will be the balance of it, 50%. How? My answer to that, based on the current proposed changes, subject to any guideline, I think it's taxable. Okay. Now I give you another scenario. I now at this age, Ernest, maybe I want to retire. I've been working in Singapore, example. Maybe I want to retire already. Malaysia is a good place to stay. So okay, I decide to retire in Malaysia. But when I work in Singapore under employment, I got a lot of CPF.
Yep.
Now I want to bring it back,
Yes.
So is that taxable or not? Now again, based on the current proposed changes, my answer to that further guideline from the IRB, that is taxable. And it is also confirmed by the IRB yesterday's seminar. It is taxable.
So how will be that taxability works? Because I would have already been paying my employment tax. If I'm under the employment, then I already paid, I serviced everything already. And if we talk about PKPP period is one thing, but if we talk about
after,
beyond that, after.
So I think if you're talking about you decide to remit within the next 6 months, I think it's quite clear based on the proposed change. You just apply 3%
another
gross.
3%.
Okay. Orally yesterday, officer also have confirmed no tax credit given to you if you remit back within this 6 months because it's gross already. Okay, clear cut. Now your question here is, if I cannot decide to remit within the next 6 months, But suddenly, I feel that I want to remit after 6 months.
Yes.
Right? So then, based on the principle of what the law say, received in Malaysia in that manner, and based on the DPA between Malaysia and Singapore, of course, public ruling about the bilateral, unilateral, that's going to be amended. Take note, I'll be going to amend that. Yes, you will be allowed to actually claim back the tax credit. Okay. The principle behind is that whatever tax credit that you want to claim, it must not exceed the tax charge in Malaysia. That is a principle. But I won't go in detail because bilateral, there will be a formula how to compute. Unilateral, maybe up to 50%, kind of the principle. But take note, Emily, there's this law currently where we talk about you can only claim the tax credit 2 years after the year assessment. If you recall, there is such a law being already so-called in place. But whether they are going to change it, let's see. Then the practical issue will be, now since I decide to remit after 6 months in the month of July, how am I going to prove the tax that I have paid? So I can only visualize if I'm a person who have a very good record. I'm a very good record keeper, for example. Every month I compute, I calculate, and I know that this source of fund, example, every month I keep my saving 30% and put in FD every month. So I keep, and I have a record. Every month in a year I got 12 FD. Okay, in the over 5 years since I worked there, how many? 12 times 5, 60 FD. So now I want to bring all my FD back into Malaysia. I think it's very simple because you're talking about 5 years. Then to determine your tax credit, you go back to the last 5 years that you have paid tax in Singapore, and you apply the formula which I mentioned that public ruling be change there and provide. And what the IRB has said, two things. Yes, we need document for you to prove, but at the minimum, you must have these two documents. Number one, notice of assessment from your foreign jurisdiction. Okay. Number two, at least must also show the tax that you paid. That means the tax receipt. These are the two minimum that IRB has emphasized and mentioned.
I see.
Okay. So then we make it even more complicated, we make it even more complicated. Since the 5 years I'm there, I say 30% I keep in FD, right? No?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. I didn't say how much I earn. So maybe I'm a very good whole high position in Singapore. So I only keep 10% as saving. But over the years, 3 years, I managed to keep something and buy a property there, right? So then after that, I decided to say, I want to rest in Malaysia, I want to come back. And I decided to dispose of for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I made a profit. Now, how do you then define? Go back to the law again. The law talk about income, right? So whatever profit you make, you also remit back after 6 months. Say lah. Question is there an income or not? It's a capital income. Then our argument here is that should not be taxable. But how do you then satisfy the authority that that portion of money you bring in is actually from the capital? I mean, again, scenario number one.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, every month 30% FD. I got 60 FD. Scenario number one, I transfer all my 60 FD across. Very simple. I can prove that is from my employment income.
Yes.
Scenario number two, I keep 10%. Right? The other balance over 3 years, I invest in property. After that, I dispose of. When I transfer back, I transfer in one lump sum. Imagine, Ernest, I may need to employ you to go and compute for me, okay, which portion perhaps is from my employment source, which portion perhaps could be from my capital source, for example.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But in principle of it, if it's from employment source, answer is taxable. If it's capital, answer is not taxable, provided you can justify that it is a capital.
Yeah, so that is $1 million questions and $1 million statement, ladies and gentlemen, provided provided that you have document to justify.
And here I'm talking about employment, you know.
Yeah.
What happened if you talk
Yeah.
about investors?
Yes. So I was about to complicate it further. Nowadays, people talk about cryptocurrencies, you know, and then in the past, during the pandemic, that is where the area of boom was at, even in the stock market. And then, in fact, people all around the world, Malaysian included, people who resided in Malaysia, buy shares at night, trade shares at night, right? Trade all this currency, whether it's, you know, like crypto or otherwise, right? And they make money. And the account is actually overseas. And today, they wanted to bring back to Malaysia. So that kind of situation, is it similar to the property, or could you elaborate further on those type? Because those are very, very late in terms of documentation, in fact.
Yeah, in fact, it doesn't only apply to cryptocurrency lah. Even though I know that is the most, I think, hot activity that currently is going on. Even you go back to the principle of preparing capital statement, for example, shares is in the same group as well, you know. But of course, today our topic is whether it's taxable or not in that sense.
Yeah.
Again, to answer your question, Ernest, I pin your word, they trade.
Okay.
The moment you tell me you are trading, it's taxable already, Ernest. Because your intention is to make profit and trade.
Okay.
Okay. So why I say the word you use, trade, is taxable is because batches of trade comes in. The activity is in the adventure, in the nature of trade comes in. So in this hypothetical situation, very likely IRB may take the position to say it's income tax.
Right. So if to prove I am not trading, it is still subject to proving.
Of course.
Subject
Of course,
to
we talk about company, but perhaps it makes slightly different from an individual. Company, perhaps you have some other document to emphasize your intention, and then some other document to demonstrate your pattern of investing and your purpose of maybe receiving dividend income for that reason. But individual, I would say, yeah, it is a challenge. But so far, from my experience in managing IRB, preparing the capital statement, we always take a position that my client is investing. You know, we always take that position. Therefore, it is an investment. It is not intention from day one that I want to trade. But sometimes it does, happen that, well, market is good and all that, I may let go. So there is always a contentious issue with the authority, you know. Yeah. So, but our approach is, the first step is investment. In that sense, you see, because you see, the other part that we always, because you see, when you prepare capital statement, it's not 1 year. I think Dr. John in the morning was saying means test. Means test is like a period of time, one period you compare. Capital statement is yearly basis.
Yeah.
So the success rate, sometimes I always argue as a capital, is because not every year the market is good. Some year the market or the counter may be bad. So sometimes it depends also the figure game, that IRB may see that this item that you make a gain, they want to tax it. Then at the same time, if I make a loss, you must allow me because it's revenue.
That's right. Yeah, if you're going to tax me, okay.
Exactly. But if it's a capital gain, the loss I will surrender as a capital loss, to be fair. So you have that impact, you know, in that sense. So coming back to your question, cryptocurrency, my understanding, it should work the similar manner, similar principle as well.
However, this tax on remittance, isn't it? So when I have a net, then you're going to tax me. So it is actually very important for anyone that was actually into investment to really see how do you actually justify your case. But Mr. So, there's one very tricky question. So we are talking about remittance that is on a historical things that is already happened. So documentations, preparation may actually be quite tough, isn't it? you know, to
Yeah.
prove our case.
I say, look, I may need to engage you to go and determine for me how many years ago, what source and all that. That
Right.
exercise may need to be carried out. What happens if you are not a good what you call
Record
documentation?
keeper.
Exactly how. I think it's a
Yeah.
practical issue and
It's a practical issue. Yeah,
yeah,
no one has an answer for that.
yeah.
So let
And
us
what?
go. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, sorry. Let us go to the questions because I see people are actually bringing questions, and I'm also watchful over time. Thank you for those that who staying back to learn. Thank you for those who stay back to learn. Today is so good that we managed to actually have Mr. Saw, Dr. John, as well as Tuan Zairi. So Elaine Teo, let's start from Elaine Teo first. Elaine Teo has a question. How about the dividend income from overseas? So we touched on just now we touched on crypto, we touched on the scenario of your employment turn into property, then you sell your property, then you bring back. What about dividend income from overseas?
Yeah, to answer that question, I'll still go back to my general principle, income. So is dividend income and income in that per se under section 4? Answer is yes. Subject to further guideline from IRB, my answer to that is yes, it's taxable. The only thing is that whether that overseas country that you remit back to Malaysia, would that dividend income is net of tax or not? Of course, if country that is net of tax, then the bilateral credit will come in. But in the situation where it is not net of tax, then yeah, then you have to pay tax grossly here in a sense. That will be the answer at the moment, subject to any guideline from the IRB.
Yeah. So Mr. Saw, let's go on with that. I wanted to pick up the one that talked about the sources definition first, I think. So Kelly Chu, I think income refers to revenue gain only as it is mentioned as income. Therefore, capital gain is not subjected to that. Well, this is on the surface, isn't it? Yeah, that this is how we understand it. But the proving of whether capital or otherwise is still based on document, right, Mr. Saw? Is there anything to add on Kelly's questions?
Kelly's question.
Yeah, Kelly's question. Yeah,
you income referring to revenue gain only. Okay. Based on income tax, like I mentioned, income refer to the section 4, 4A until F, right? You are right, capital gain on the surface is not taxable, but I mentioned about the principle of adventure in the nature of trade, the batches of trade that you got to take note of. But for you to justify as a capital gain, documentation must come in to support. I think property is the easiest to support lah. That is a capital gain. Share, crypto, that one maybe personally maybe it's a challenge the way how I see.
I will jump down to I think the questions from Anonymous is already been answered. Basically, your employment income arrives in Singapore. Mr. So you see that question? Maybe you can just just answer one more time very quickly on that before we jump to Leong Chun Chao.
Yeah. So when you remit back to Malaysia, quick answer is yes, tax. But since already tax in Singapore, so based on DTA, you'll be entitled to bilateral calculation need to be required, in terms of that. Yep.
If it's under PKPP period?
If under PKP, it's only the 3% on gross, tax credit will not be allowable in that sense.
Right.
But
right.
But one interesting point here I want to add here is that other than just focusing on whether this employment income is tax or not tax, what I have commented, especially those people in Johor, right? I think what is important is, can you determine whether you are a resident in Malaysia or a resident in Singapore?
Yeah, so yes, exactly. So are you a resident first to begin with? Are you a resident first?
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you are a non-resident in Malaysia, no issue at all. But again, you need to prove. And in terms of determining the residency status, assuming you are saying you are a Singapore resident, then for completeness purposes, it's better for you to get a confirmation on your resident status from the Singapore authority.
Yeah.
Right.
So these are all very important factors. Leong Chun Chao, having a comment here as well. Would you like to actually comment on Leong Chun Chao? The last one.
Even if invest as well, not easy to determine, especially that some are in overseas for more than 10 years, where income could be from many sources, including investment. How to solve practically? I think Yeah, I don't have an answer for you, but I think if I were to put myself in that shoe, I agree with you. I may have investment sources from everywhere, but I think the first point I need to decide is that do I want to bring all in, for example? If answer is yes, then the cut-off and timing become important. And this is the part I think Anna's have been saying lah. What sort of document? So the usual practice we always start off with, if this is in terms of cash matter, always start off with the bank lah. You know, so bank statement is something that even more than certain years, to a certain extent, some people may still be able to get it. And the bank statement, debit, credit, sometimes may give you some indication, you know, how do you want to determine so-called the source of fund in terms of that. Maybe that's my general answer to that, Leong.
Right. There is one interesting question that was actually before the later questions. The distribution of fund to beneficiary from private trusts. Yeah, so I believe it's about a situation whereby there is a trust, a family trust or whatever being set up. And then there are payments from the trust to the beneficiary. Is it like, you know, when he asked whether this is actually an income? Do you think this question is easy to answer? Or
okay, I don't have much info on that, but to answer that, because of the statement you mentioned, distribution of fund.
yeah.
So to me, distribution of fund itself, to me, doesn't really sound like an income. Because if I were to fall back on the section 4A, yeah, doesn't seem to fall in any of the category. But of course, if this is a private trust, I think your private trust agreement do play an important role, whether there's any definition when you talk about this distribution of fund or not. So I think I would just answer in that manner. And yeah.
I see. Okay. There is this interesting question coming from Kelly Chu. Kelly Chu would like to seek clarification on the definition. Again, I want to tackle on definition. Why? Because I believe it is where the definitions that everyone is actually you know, like bobbing down. Definition, documentations, and then what is your status? The three important things. It's an inheritance received by a trust beneficiary from an offshore trust set up overseas taxable. Yeah.
I will still go on the same principle. What is my income? So it's from the 4A to 4F.
Yeah.
So then the issue will be inheritance that I receive. Is it really an income? My view is not at the moment.
Sounds like a gift, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds more like a gift.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm also watchful over time.
But take note, the inheritance received, whether for example, a situation inheritance of 1 million and you receive 1 million, okay, it's arguable. These are all like a gift, like what you say. But you got inheritance subject to payment to you. Maybe this person keep this 1 million outside and while pending for whatever approval to transmit, either this person go and put in FD or this person go and put in whatever investment. And then end up, he managed to get 1.5 million, say lah. And then you take the 1.5 and bring it back. Then there's a two part of the category, you know. Documentation wise that support inheritance is only 1 million. Maybe the other 500,000 could become from FD interest income or whatever investment income. Then that one got to be careful. That is not inheritance. That could be an income in that nature. So documentation important to justify.
Yeah. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, why we are actually having these audit topics in the morning is also because we believe everything is subject to review now. Everything is about audit. So Elaine Teo has a question. What if my dividend income, which come from the overseas, which actually already paid, meaning is after tax, already paid a higher tax of 25% compared to Malaysia 24%. So what's going to happen to the balance? We come to the DTA part.
Yeah, so Elaine, if you recall, I commented earlier the sound to talk about the bilateral and the unilateral, that 2 years. I also add on by saying the tax credit must not exceed the tax charge in Malaysia. So in this case, because it's higher, right? So there won't be any additional taxes in Malaysia. neither can you claim a refund of the 1%. So it will be as it is. Yeah. But
Yes,
you
yes,
must prove.
yes.
You must prove the 25% that you suffered.
Right, I see. Okay.
And
yeah.
also the country depend on whether you have a DTA or you don't have a DTA, right? If you have a DTA bilateral formula, and this with the assumption 25% is correct. If it's a unilateral, it may not be 25%, but subject to guidance. So you may be able to claim only 50% of the 25%. So end up you may still need to pay taxes, but
Right.
case by case basis. Yeah.
Okay, okay. I think we pretty much have covered most of the questions that's coming from this foreign source of income. Unfortunately, we are also still waiting for like more clarification from the authorities, because I believe there will be a lot of other teasing issue, including foreigners who are not citizens of Malaysia, but they actually ended up as a Malaysian tax residents because they reside here in Malaysia. And same things apply. We talk about residency status and then bringing it back, things like that. Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for staying on. Now, please remember that this particular event that we are actually having will actually be, it is actually a charitable event. Then there are actually booths that was actually belonging to our charitable organizations as well. Feel free to go and take a look at them and then give their direct donation. Whatever that you have paid for the participations into these talks that we are having, the net proceed we are actually donating out as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before you leave, now we are actually going to have a replay of the sessions, okay? Which is actually, there are two replay sessions for our morning sessions. One is actually at 2 p.m. later on. When you come into the hop-in, right, at the reception, you will actually be seeing notices. One of the replay time is at 2 p.m. Another replay time is actually at 6:15 this evening, right? This is sessions not replay. Okay. Zekai, please let me know whether the message is correct. The replay time, right? Yeah, the replay is 6:15. The replay and 6:15. All right. The session tab is, yeah, maybe Zekai, can you unmute yourself to explain on this session so that so that I'm giving so that we give the right information to the participant? Would you be able to unmute yourself?
Yeah. Our replay session will be replayed inside the session under the main stage tab, not inside the replay tab.
Right. So ladies and gentlemen, play around with the hopping platform and look for the tab. If you wanted to refresh some of the things that has actually been said, you can actually go back to the replay button, right? Now, everyone, please come back in. Yeah, have a quick lunch. Please come back in at 2 p.m. We are actually going to have another sessions on East Malaysia, opportunity in East Malaysia. And I saw that they are having, a lot of preparation done to give you a lot of information as well. So do come back for that. And thank you, everybody. Zekai, you may actually move on to actually play the video. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Saw, for your thing.
Thank you,
Allow Mr. Saw 1 minute, 1 minute to do a quick closing. Right, Mr. Saw, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ernest. I hope whatever input I have given at the moment, it provides some clarity. But I think my advice, look out for update from the IRB website from now onwards. Just one last part is that knowing IRB, I believe the tax audit investigation is going to be very active from next year onwards. Should you all have any help required, can also contact me directly. For individual, please take note, capital statement, never analysis is something that will be a focus area by the IRB. Agnes, back to you.
Right. I can see the participants are continue to actually post questions. Continue to have the questions. My team will be actually picking up those questions, and then I wanted to be able to provide the answers as well subsequent to this event as well, right? Okay. So continue to post your question, but leave down your contact number so that we are able to actually contact you back. Okay. Now over back to Zekai for the video. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Fall, for your time.
Bye.
For me, it's about integrity, dedication, and leading by example. Nothing was ever achieved without hard work.
You have to have knowledge and inspiration in equal measures. I have to be precise, but be prepared to experiment.
For me, it's about respecting the individual and improving communities. Putting myself in their shoes to deliver the best possible outcomes.
It allows me to be creative in an area that I'm passionate about, seeking the facts and providing insight.
When I first started running, I had all kinds of problems to overcome. I had to work hard to teach myself never to give up. Of course, I need focus and dedication, the ability to set a target and work towards it. Little by little, you reach your goal.
When I'm baking, I'm intrigued by having a problem to solve. The key values that cross over between baking and work are innovation, dedication, and the ability to connect with others. What fascinates me most is how food can bring people together.
For me, it all starts with curiosity. I seek knowledge, then act to provide answers and support. In human rights advocacy, you can't act alone. You need to build a team to help you achieve your goals.
I'm a perfectionist. It's about finding the perfect cup of coffee and learning about what makes it so. And then it's about taking all the information and insight and presenting it to people in a helpful way that is useful for them.